Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. What's up? Before we get into today's episode, please join me on a little introduction and explanation of the sponsors that make this podcast possible. Today's episode is brought to you by Kalo. Now, if you've never heard of Kalo, they are the maker or makers of silicone rings, made specifically for adventurers, workers, dreamers, and outdoor enthusiasts with active lifestyles. I first heard about Kalo when I was working for CrossFit many years ago, like early 2010 decade. And the first time I saw it was actually on the CrossFit athlete's hands. I had a platinum wedding band that if I even touched it with anything remotely like a barbell, the knurling, it would scuff it. So I would have to take my ring off, put it back on, take my ring off, put it back on. And first off, that's problematic. I almost lost it a few times, but it just sucked. And when I saw the silicone rings on the athlete's fingers, I knew it was going to be amazing. And another thing that I was worried about in my old job was getting your finger caught with the ring on there and having it degloved. If you want to scare yourself, if you're not that hungry, go ahead and do a little Google and do a little ring avulsion or degloving, and you're not going to like what you have sitting in front of you. So if you wear rings, but you're worried about damaging the ring or damaging the finger, you need to go to kalo.com/clearedhot. And what you're going to find is that they have a ton of rings, some that can specialize, whether it's a branch of military service or what you do occupationally, colors, different, I was going to say settings, but that's not correct, different patterns. They have a ton of stuff, and it allows you to celebrate whatever it is you were trying to memorialize by wearing that ring, risk-free to your finger. If you reach that level of tension, it's going to break as opposed to breaking your finger. And I'll leave it there. Why don't you go and check it out, kalorings.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Feels. They produce high-quality CBD. CBD isn't about what you feel, it's about what you don't feel. And what I mean by that is stress, anxiety, and potentially pain. I've used CBD for all three of those, and what I love about it is that the results are nearly immediate. Feels is a better way to feel better. Go to feels.com/clearedhot, and you're going to get 50% off of your first order with free shipping. Feels is a premium CBD that will help you keep your head clear and feel your best, hassle-free, delivered directly to your door, naturally helping to reduce stress, anxiety, and pain and sleeplessness. There's no hangover, no addiction. You place a few drops of Feels under your tongue, and you're going to feel the difference within minutes. The thing to remember about CBD is that finding the right dose is critical. I highly recommend the Flight because it is 3 different dosages, and you can find what's right for you. Feels offers a free CBD hotline to help guide you through this personal experience so that you find your perfect dose. And the customer service team is dedicated to making sure that you get the best use of your CBD. Joining the Feels monthly membership makes your self-care very easy. You can save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel at any time. Start feeling better with Feels. Become a member today by going to feels.com/clearedhot, and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That is feals.com/clearedhot to become a member and get 50% off automatically. Take it off your first order with free shipping. Feels.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. If there's something interfering with your happiness or success or preventing you from achieving your goals, you're not alone. I've been there, and I have used professional counseling and therapy to help me. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. Of note, though, this is not a crisis line and it's not self-help. It is professional counseling that is done securely online with a broad range of expertise available, which you may not have locally available, depending on where you live. The service is available for clients worldwide, and you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You're going to get a timely and thoughtful response, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so that you don't have to wait in waiting rooms if that makes you uncomfortable. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. Personal anecdote here, don't be surprised if you don't have a great connection on your first matchup. You might, and that's amazing, but if you don't give up on the process. Find somebody that you connect with better. BetterHelp is more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. Visit betterhelp.com/clearedhot. That's better, HELP.com/clearedhot, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they're recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. Special offer for the listeners, 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Element. Contrary to popular belief, dehydration is not the biggest problem facing athletes. Overhydration, sans electrolytes, actually is. Why does this happen? Why has this happened? Well, organizations like the American College of Sports Medicine recommend drinking beyond thirst to replace lost fluids. That's why you see so many watering stations on marathon courses. It's also why so many endurance athletes overhydrate, dilute blood sodium levels, and develop hyponatremia, which is low serum sodium, which causes headaches, fatigue, muscle cramps, weakness, dizziness, and confusion. In severe cases, it can actually result in seizures or death. The takeaway here, obvious to some, we should be focusing more on preventing hyponatremia than preventing dehydration. This means drinking to thirst and ensuring adequate electrolyte intake. Element Recharge is the solution. It is a tasty electrolyte drink mix designed to support active hydration and a healthy lifestyle. Created by health leaders like Rob Wolf, a very good friend of mine, Element has enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium to get you feeling and performing your best. Plus, it has zero sugar, artificial ingredients, or other junk that you don't want. Element is the exclusive hydration partner of Team USA Weightlifting. It's used by dozens of teams across the NFL, NBA, and NHL, and is recommended by hundreds of the world's leading health and fitness experts. You're guaranteed to find a flavor that your taste buds are going to love. Citrus salt, orange salt, raspberry salt, chocolate salt, great in coffee by the way, mango chili, lemon habanero, side note, don't open those near your face, raw and flavored, and the brand new watermelon salt. So whether you're training for strength, endurance, or longevity, make it a point to put electrolytes in your water. Drinking electrolyte water can really improve how you feel and perform, and what is more important than that? Go to drinklmnt.com/clearedhot. That is drinklmnt.com/clearedhot and use the promo code clearedhot. Enjoy. My guest today is a longtime friend who, unfortunately, I haven't had much chance to spend time with in about a decade. His name is Tim Rigby, and he is a fascinating man. He was into doing cool shit before doing cool shit was cool. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it makes sense to me. Born and raised in the UK, you're probably going to recognize that once you hear his accent. And served in the military, decided he wanted to come to the United States as a stuntman. And damn, he lived that life to the fullest. Started off doing live, I'm going to call them live action shows, entertainment shows at places like, Disney World and things of that nature, and transitioned to the screen, small, medium, and large. Worked his way through that, all the way up to being a stunt coordinator for movies you might recognize, like Wonder Woman, Batman vs. Superman, the ones that come out in the summer and just crush for the audience. In addition to that, skydiver, base jumper. He was into base jumping long before it had the publicity and awareness that it has in the modern era, but he has been getting after it for an incredibly long period of time. I also almost forgot to say he was a pilot. We talk about that as well. I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to let everybody else enjoy episode 184 with the man himself, Tim Rigby.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Where do we even start? We were talking about base jumping. So when you and I was actually thinking about this because we haven't seen each other face to face in 5 years?
I think
6 years? 10 years?
It's been longer than that.
We went skydiving in Paris, Valley, not France, for people listening. Like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Was that the last time we actually were face-to-face?
Right, maybe, because we spoke on the phone about that job you ended up...
Yep.
Which I bet that was fun.
It wasn't bad. They gave me a stunt bump. I got an understanding of the pay a little bit in Hollywood, which isn't bad. However, not my jam. You have more commitment than me to work in the field that you work in, which I'm sure we can dive into that as well too. But what the hell was Lethal Weapon? Yeah, I was on. I was supposed to be kind of just like a little bit behind the scenes, and I ended up actually just doing what it is that they wanted me to kind of show other people how to do. I'm like, just give me the shit. Well,
I think they wanted you to just move tactically, and I said, "I know a guy."
Yeah, I think I sprinted for at least 25 yards. It was arduous because I had to do it 3 times.
Glad it wasn't too rough.
No, but yeah, that was a phone conversation. It might well be a decade since we were last time face to face.
Yeah.
Far too long.
Yeah, too long. It was good to see you.
How was your journey up here?
Good.
I'm more interested in, let's talk about aviation. We're going to bore the shit out of people right out of the gate. You still got the same Cessna?
I have a different one. It's a 182, Cessna 182.
Awesome.
It's slightly different, slightly newer.
What kind of avionics we rocking in this thing?
Oh, this is really going to fascinate everybody now.
Are we talking steam gauges or are we talking glass?
A little bit of both. Some steam gauges, but I have a more modern GPS.
Okay, fair.
An Avionics.
I'm familiar with the model. Yeah, when we first met, I wasn't doing any flying or any base jumping. And then I went a little deep down both of those rabbit holes.
Yeah. You're like an expert at taking something up and then becoming an expert at it. I half expect I'm going to listen to a podcast where you've taken up caving and all of a sudden you're like hooked up with the world champion caver and now you're that guy.
That's what I would do. Not that I would become a world champion caver, but my number one approach to learning anything is go directly to the person who's the best at it.
Right.
So when I wanted to learn how to base jump, this was back in 2013, maybe. I was on the internet. Who has the most base jumps?
Miles.
He did at the time. I think he's been surpassed by Sean Chuma.
Has he?
Yeah. Chuma just...
How's that possible?
Well, Chuma sends it, I think, about a baker's dozen times every day.
Does he really?
Oh my God. The guy just boom. Every time I've been there with Miles, and I haven't been there in a while, Sean's just there. It's like, hey, dude. And he's just dush, 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 over and over and over again. I think Chuma might be over 6,000. Whereas Miles, I know, went over 5,000 because he retired after 5,000 so he could say he was coming out of retirement. That was the only purpose of him retiring, was so he could like have a coming out of retirement party. But yeah, Chuma's there. But when I Googled it, and then I actually, there was a woman who owned the gear shop at Skydive San Diego, Bonnie.
I know Bonnie.
Yeah. So she's the one who linked me up with Miles because I saw the name. I'm like, okay, Miles Dasher. This dude seems to have more experience in the world than anybody, at least that I can find on the internet. And I saw that he had been at Truckee. And I was like, wait a minute. Bonnie had been at Truckee. So I went to the gear store at Skydive San Diego. Bonnie, do you know Miles? I know Miles D. It's kind of like the same thing everybody says when you bring up Miles' name. Oh, Miles D. And I said, do you have an email? She's like, man, it's an old one, but give it a shot. So I fired off an email in the dark, and he answered back. And we met at the parking lot at the Paramount Bridge, and the rest is pseudo history. He shepherded me the whole way through, from slick to taking me to my first trip overseas. We went Monte Brento. My first wingsuit jumps were with him out of an airplane. The combination of both of those, wingsuit base jumping, it was pretty sweet. And then into the Lauterbrunnen Valley.
I love that place.
God, I want to go back. I just don't know if I would make it out.
No, also known as the Valley of Death.
I've been there. I don't like to romanticize base jumping because I think some people, they enjoy describing it like it's this razor blade of death all the time, which I think if you're an asshole about it and you don't pay attention to the risk, it can be. But also, if there's people out there like Miles, who I think's worst injury from base jumping is like a ripped toenail or something like that, it's very possible to do as safe as possible.
Right.
But I've been in the Valley. There was a week time period. I was there with a buddy of mine named Alex, who ironically died from wingsuit base jumping in France. And I think 7 or 8 people went in a week. And it was just, we would be on the west side of the Valley and the helo would be over on the east side. We would go to we'd kind of just switch back and forth,
Sure.
Go jump like the Moose or Le Moose or the High Le Moose on one side, and then the next day we're over at the High Nose, and it was like we were watching the helicopters go back and forth, ping-ponging back and forth. Changes your motivation a touch?
Yeah, I think when you get into base jumping, you think, this is really hardcore, this is dangerous, and then you do it for a little bit, and you're like, it's got a little bit of a undeserving reputation. It's not that dangerous. I'm kind of enjoying the stigma of being a bit more of a rebel than I am. And then you're in it a bit longer, and then you go, oh no, it's about accurate.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see some carnage. If you stick around, you're going to lose some friends.
Yeah, and I think the way you described it is correct. It has that aura to it, and you're like, okay, you get into it, and like, maybe this isn't that bad. And what I have noticed, and in myself and in others, is they'll start to relax their risk assessment just a touch, and that's where shit goes south pretty fast.
And also, like, you know, you come from a military background. I was in the military in the UK. Like, when I go on a base trip, I'm a Boy Scout. Like, I'm prepared. I do a dress rehearsal before I go, my wingsuit. And
it would irritate people, my jock-up procedure. I'm just like, same thing every single time. I lay the shit out the same way in my backpack. As I get my stuff on, as I'm stepping up, I have relatively robust procedures in my head. But none of it is just like this ad hoc on the fly. No. I think through it a lot.
But I'm sure you've been out in the mountains with guys that don't feel the same way, and guys that are just winging it. And I'm like, you know, if somebody gets hurt, I hope it's you and not me, because you're going to be worthless if I get hurt.
Yeah. No, I learned over time that I had to also be very cautious who I would go jumping with in the backcountry. Yeah. Because my theory, and I wish this was the theory for everybody, is that if we depart on an adventure like that, we don't come back unless we're all together. Yeah. It's same trip. I think Miles might have been there for this. A guy goes off the high ultimate, where they have the ramp that's sticking out. Yep. And it's hard to describe to people how ridiculous Lauterbrunnen is, because you take a cable car up, a trolley over. It's not Wengen. It's on the other side of the valley. You can literally get an espresso and a hot dog, walk 50 feet down, like brick patio, to the high ultimate, which is a ramp that's jutting out. I guess you could probably send that if there wasn't that ramp, but you better get the best running start of your life. Slick. Right. A guy goes off, over rotates forward. I think he emergency pitched, ends up canopy, swings into the cliff face. His buddies, and I might be slightly mischaracterizing what happened, but I heard this from more than one person. His buddies, I believe, it might have been a three-way. So and by that I mean all three go off at the same time. The two buddies land, go to the Horner pub, get a hold of his mom, tell him that he has died, and the motherfucker was alive on the side of the mountain.
Wow.
So they, you know, and I get it probably was an emotional event for them, and in their own sorrow, it's just like, bon voyage, Bob.
Could have checked.
Yeah, bon voyage, Bob. We'll be at the bar getting drunk and calling your mom. It's like, hey, man. So he got, you know, lifted. The helicopter service there is another one that's hard to describe. So incredibly skilled. Just long line a guy down, pick him off into the hospital. And he was walking around the valley a few days later with said group of friends, which I would then probably move to a lower group of the friend circle.
Wow.
That is the opposite of how I feel things should be. If you're going to commit, and I feel that way when it's hunting or even skydiving. Like we go to Paris, if you had a cutaway, I would not go to the main drop zone. I would land next to you, and then we'd go find your reserve, and then we would continue on with our day. It's not like, hey, Tim, man, I'll see you later. I'm going to catch a few more loads. I think I saw your reserve going over there. That's my mentality. I think that comes from the military background a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah, and you sort of expect, when you first go, you think everyone's going to be the same way. But that's kind of the beauty of it. There's an eclectic bunch of people that I never would have mixed with, and now you're out in the middle of nowhere with them.
Yeah. Be cautious, people, who you go out to the middle of nowhere with. How did you get into base jumping? Because I remember before I was skydiving. I had always loved skydiving ever since my first jump. But you sent me a video, I think, from Switzerland. It had to have been, the wingsuit you were wearing. I look at it in comparison to the suits now. You basically were wearing a T-shirt, and like a napkin in between your legs. But you sent it off a huge cliff, and that was pre what I would say the explosion of at least attention on base jumping.
Yeah, I think I did my first wingsuit base jump in, it's either 99 or 2000.
Yeah, that's early, in my opinion.
Yeah, there wasn't, it's funny because it was I bet the stats are probably the same. People get better, but they find different ways to kill themselves. But back then, no one could really fly the suits that well. That was how they were dying. People with minimal skydives. Not me. I had hundreds of wingsuit skydives before I did it because I prepared myself. But there was people that were just chucking them off the cliffs, not getting any distance away. And now you're in a straitjacket, and now you're opening really close to the cliff with a slider up, and not always having a great outcome.
Yeah.
So, but I started base jumping. I found a guy at Paris. I probably shouldn't mention his, but it doesn't really matter now. But
I'll leave that up to you.
yeah, he's a good guy, and he taught me to base jump, and that was kind of how you had to do it back then. Get a mentor, and
did he wear a lot of black?
No, he didn't teach me. We got started about the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I went on a lot of trips with Jeb, but
all right. Yeah, I'm talking about Jeb Corliss, who apparently has one color of clothing in his closet, which I can respect.
Yeah, it saves time in the morning when you get dressed, I guess.
That's what Steve Jobs said.
Yeah. But also back then, like, you would not talk about base jumping on a drop zone. It was like you were talking about a drug deal. I mean, people would get, if they found out you base jump, you could get banned from the drop zone. No one would ever pack a base rig at a drop zone back then. It was really, it was underground and sort of frowned upon. And the USPA, the United States Parachute Association, wanted nothing to do with it. Yeah. Because every time a base jumper got hurt, they'd get a call, and it's like, nothing to do with us.
Yeah, they're more interested in objects that have lift of some kind.
Yeah.
And exiting said object.
But I went with this guy who is he's a kind of a private guy, so I probably shouldn't say his name, but he really helped me out, and we went to an unnamed bridge in Northern California. Yeah. And
did you shoot a movie off this bridge?
May have done, yeah. And so I did my first one there. Yeah. And I had many trips to that said bridge.
How many skydives did you have before you did your first base jump?
I had over 1,000. And
did you get into jumping in the military in the UK?
I did, but just static line.
Yeah. And exposure.
Round canopies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I call that very loosely jumping. It's more like falling onto concrete from 30 feet.
Yeah, you can put a cargo. You can put a dog out on a static line. I still enjoyed it though. I mean, now looking back, I wouldn't want to go and do it now, but at the time it was all I knew, and I was like, this is fun. I mean, it was exciting.
So you started up in Northern California, first jump there. Was it in the daytime or was it in the low light hours?
It was in the low light hours.
Okay, interesting. So we're talking about flirting with the legalities, and then what was your progression from there?
Went up there a whole bunch, and then there's a few objects in that area. There's a dam.
And huge antennas as well,
huge,
right?
Yep, done them.
Yep.
Those huge antennas. Then the bridge, the Prime Bridge, which we can't mention because that's legal. Well, I lived up there. I used to go up there. I mean, I couldn't get enough. And then European trips, started going to Girard in Norway. Went there 3 times, and then started going to northern Norway to the bigger cliffs up there. Then Switzerland, and then went out to Kuala Lumpur, jumped the Petronas Towers for a competition out there.
Hell yeah.
Angel Falls, managed to get out to Angel Falls. And then during this time, and also, and there's another building in downtown L.A. as well, apparently.
But also I'm sure at some point we'll talk about your professional career. You work in the entertainment industry. And it seems to be interesting how an illegal activity can all of a sudden become legal if there's a check associated with it and zeros that start being written. Because I've seen you base jumping in movies off of buildings that would probably get you thrown in jail had you not been there with the production.
Yeah. And the funny thing is about that, when you do a base jump for a movie, I mean, normally because I'm a stuntman that loves skydiving and base jumping, but I've made a living as a mainstream stuntman in movies. And so, you'll get hired by the stunt coordinator. But for something like a base jump, both times I've done base jumps for movies, I've had to go and meet the producers, which is sort of an unusual, but they want to go, who is this guy? Is this going to kill himself on my movie?
Are they doing essentially a sanity check on you?
That's what it feels like. And I think I think I either surprise / disappoint them. They think I'm going to be like a lot of our friends are, and
full send or no send, if you will. Yeah.
And so, and you have to approach it differently on a movie. Like if whatever you've done out in the base world, whatever kind of out of a 1 to 10 in base jumping, whatever kind of a risk you take, you have to dial it back a little bit on a movie, because you can't just be operating at your max risk, because there's other things at stake. Other people,
the entire movie production.
Yeah. And the other thing is that when you do when you do a jump for a movie, if the weather's good and you said you were going to do it, you have to go. And that kind of because I know when I go on a base trip, and I don't know about you, but I used to do a lot of lying to myself. I'd go, I'm probably just going to hike up and I'll take a look. And if those guys jump, I may just hike down. I might not even jump.
Famous last words. I'm just going to hike up.
I mean, and on that note, I would never go like towards the end of the day when I saw guys get into trouble, the weather comes in and now they're out there for the night. I would never do that. I'd always genuinely have enough time to get back. Some of the lengthy ones in northern Norway, I don't know if I'd have found my way back. And sometimes the safest option is just to get off the thing.
Yeah.
But the sort of perception, because now you've been a base jumper, you are a base jumper, you've done all the sneaking around, and especially in the early days of like illegal base jumping, and now you're on a movie and now you have to sort of conduct yourself a little bit differently. And the producers and for example, at said bridge, I'm talking to the cops up there. The cops are locking off the bridge. And they're like, yeah, we have some lunatics come up here, and and I'm like,
what do they look like?
Yeah. I mean, I never got busted there, but my ground crew got lit up by a cop car.
Yeah.
And I was like a down pilot scrambling up the side of the, I thought I was going to have to do some escape and evasion for the night. And potentially, I don't know, but that could have been the same cops that were like locking off traffic for me when I jumped.
We should talk about that jump because you rode a car off the Auburn Bridge for the movie XXX. I would love to know, first off, how that first got pitched to you, and then how you guys figured out how to do that, because I don't know how you actually practiced that pre-cameras rolling.
Well, ironically, I had got back from Norway about 6 months prior to XXX coming up on the radar. And I had been doing some of that early wingsuit stuff. And the director had got wind that I'd been doing that. I'd made this videotape, and maybe in the one you saw.
Were you already in the stunt world at this time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was fairly well-established stuntman. Not really known for skydiving in the stunt world. I was just a mainstream stuntman. And so they like this no one had seen it. This is new stuff. Originally they wanted wingsuit base jumping in the movie.
Off of the car?
No, it wasn't. No,
Okay.
car came up. That suggestion came up later.
Okay.
And then it just became logistically too challenging because there's only a few places in the way. Norway, we have to go a certain time of the year, and they're like, okay, what else? And then the stunt coordinator, I was at Paris Valley skydiving. He called me, goes, they've had an idea. I want to run it by you. Oh no, they had two ideas. The first one was like, would you ride a BMX bike off the Arco building in downtown L.A., do a double back flip on a BMX bike into a base jump?
I'm saying yes.
I was like, that's not an immediate yes.
I'm going to need to research. What are we talking? Is this an 80-story building or a 40?
It's a 40-story building, and I'm not a BMX guy. And the problem was they had the director was saying, well, I saw, you ever heard of the BMX guy, Matt Hoffman? Mm-hmm. He rode a BMX bike off a cliff in Norway, like 3,000 feet. I was like, well, I'd do that. It's not
I'd ride a unicycle off a cliff in Norway.
Because you got altitude to just save yourself. But 400 feet is a little bit different. But I didn't say no, but I said to him, I'm going to have to do some training. You're going to have to send me to like that Woodward camp. I'm going to see if I can backflip a BMX bike into the foam pit. I'm going to do that a whole bunch of times. Then I want to permit like the New River Gorge Bridge, and I'll try it off there. And then if I get good, we'll do it. But I'm not willing to have my bridle wrap around the pedals and just stream her in.
Fuck, can you imagine?
Yeah. So I said, but it will go down that road, and I'll go all the way down that road. And if every stage I get to, I'm successful, we'll go to the next stage. But if you want an absolute yes now for the end, I can't give you that. And they were like, well, that's too much of a deal for a possible no. And then I got a call saying, how about riding a car off a bridge? And I pretty much said yes right away.
Okay. How did you guys actually figure out how to do that?
Well, they had so the effects guys built the car, and we had some test cars, bunch of test cars, and they built this roller coaster track. So the
Which you can actually see in the movie. I've gone back and watched it. It's interesting what you can see when you know how it was put together, because there's that overhead shot of the helicopter and you can see, but it's only for a second. You see it in the cut and you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they built this track so the car was on, the engine was stripped out because there was a national park down below. There can't be any fluids. So they had, they built some, I don't know, like 5 other cars, just junkers, but weighted the same. And then we went up to this place in L.A. in Simi Valley that had sort of a dirt cliff, and they just kept sending cars off the cliff just to see what they would do. And I was just there watching, and just to see the sort of attitude of the car. And then they did that for a while, and they were very scientific. Placed a water bottle on there to simulate how, if that just kind of went tumbling off, because there was only a short distance to get up to speed. So it had to be. They were a little bit worried that the acceleration might be so great it might just peel me off, which it wasn't. It was fine, but we had to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah. And
then on the day they. So I also worked with I always jumped. At the time, it was called Basic Research, the later Apex Base. I used to jump their gear. And Todd Shoebotham is the guy that owns that company and is a guru of all that stuff. And I always consulted with him. I've had him on every job where I've done a base jump. And I was like, well, there's going to be a burble from the car. And I'm not going to be at terminal airspeed. When I throw my pilot chute, I'm probably going to get some hesitation because, as you know, you can, well, especially in a wingsuit, but even when you look at student jumpers, the pilot chute can dance around on their back and burble and not get into that clean air.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was going to be some really dirty air behind that car. So how could I configure the parachute with the pilot chute size, the bridle length? At the time, they had a thing called a multi, which would, instead of have a single point of the bridle attachment, it was a 4-point, so it would pull the canopy from a couple of cells out. It sort of went away, but I used to jump it. It was
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone uses it anymore, but I used it for that. So just, geeky stuff. And I came up with a configuration, and I said to Todd, I don't want to discuss it with you. I want to come up with something. I want you to come up with something. I want to see how close we were. And we came up with the exact same configuration, so I was pretty happy.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit of an oversized pilot chute, but not too big, because that can be detrimental, as you know.
Yeah.
You can just... and then we just had to sort of... Oh, and then before I did the jump, we sent one car off to see what... And I had this discussion with the effects guys. I'm like, I think I want some weight in the front. You've taken the engine out. I want weight in the front. Because if this thing does a front flip, I don't really mind as much. The backflip wouldn't be good because it would trap me.
If the old nose comes up on that bad boy, that would be very interesting.
Yeah. And it was 650 feet to the landing area. I think it's like 7 and change to the water.
Yeah.
So the first one then they gave me this whole physics lesson, how, Tim, wait, they said, if I got a broom handle and I put a dumbbell at one end and I drop it, which end is going to hit the ground first? And I was like, the end with a dumbbell. They went, nope, it's going to go the same time in the vacuum. And
we're not in a vacuum.
We're not in a vacuum. Anyway, sure enough, the first one went off and it backflipped. So I said, even if weight in the front does nothing, we'll just put it in anyway. And they were cool. They're like, yeah, we'll put it in.
Yeah. After their physics lesson failed in real time.
Failed.
So how'd that feel, stepping onto the back of the car for the first time, getting ready to send that bad boy? Because how did you practice for that?
Well,
other than being current base jumping, obviously.
I was very current base jumping, and I was always, I base jumped. I took a couple of trips to the bridge right before I went, and I was always fairly conservative with how I would jump there. And I was like, I got to get out of my comfort zone, and I'd never really at that point. Some guys were pretty good at throwing flips. Some guys were just winging it. And I gymnastically, I was fairly competent. In all my stunt training, yeah. I know I had more aerial awareness than half these base jumpers that were chucking gainers. I was like, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that, and I'm better at it than you are. But you're not. You're a lunatic. But I made myself do it. So I started throwing first of all single gainers and then double gainers off the bridge. And I didn't. I needed to get out of my comfort zone because I didn't know. I might get all out of shape in this car. I didn't know exactly how it was going to go.
How was it the day of when you finally climbed onto the back of that thing?
It was I'll be lying if I said I had a good night's sleep the night before. Because the pressure, there was 18 cameras. The whole crew was there for this stunt. I've never...
It's a lot on your shoulders.
I've never had that since. And I just felt the weight of the event, and the weather was, the weather was perfect. So it was like, I could say no and that'd be it. I will never, that'll be the end. And I'd given my word. And I wanted to do it, but the pressure was, I felt it. I felt the pressure for sure.
How'd it go off?
It went fine.
Did you do it more than once?
No, I did. I jumped first they wanted some canopy stuff.
Yeah.
So I jumped first. And then when I did it, it really went perfectly. The only thing that was slightly different than perfect, it was, I wanted to make something of it. So they wanted to look like, the guy, Vin Diesel's character was this badass. So they wanted to see he's surfing the car for a little bit. So there's a fine line between making it look good and they're just riding it all the way in. And so I wrote it to what I thought was an acceptable amount of time, and I pitched. And this, when I pitch on a base jump, you have this mental clock of how long it takes.
Yes.
And even as fine-tuned as your mental clock is, I always go, this is slightly longer than normal. I think I'm about to die. And then crack, the parachute opens. So this one actually was longer than normal. That with my built-in, I always think it's longer than normal. So I got this crazy surreal view of a car just floating in front of me, but it went fine.
An amazing stunt. That stunt was, I thought that was badass long before I met you. And then I met you, I was like, oh, son of a bitch. Impressive, to say the least.
Thank you.
How was it base jumping? And what was the movie you did a base jump in downtown L.A. for, standing on the side of the building?
That was Along Came Polly.
I mean, seriously, how crazy is it that the cops that hypothetically you would run from are down there stopping traffic and high-fiving you?
It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Just because there's a fucking check involved. They go from criminal to, that's awesome, dude.
But they don't even see it as you're the same guy. They're like, I know there's wingnuts out there. They're not pros like you, Tim. And I'm like, especially the bridge. I'm like, I've jumped this bridge many times. I had I was sort of jumping around, but one of my first stunt jobs, I started doing live shows. I used to do I worked at Universal Studios, and they had a Miami Vice stunt show, and then they had a Waterworld show, and I did the Waterworld show, and that was kind of how I got started. Well, the Miami Vice was how I got started. And then later on they opened a Terminator 2 show. And for the opening of the show, they had my buddy used to be, for many, many years was Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double. He's a good friend of mine. And he wasn't available. So I actually, for this, doubled, skinny as I am, I doubled Arnold Schwarzenegger for this gag, which was a Sikorsky sky crane with a Humvee suspended underneath it. And then I Aussie rappelled out the Humvee into the crowd. We do what's called a Texas switch in the movies, where I go around a corner and then another buddy of mine who's on a motorcycle comes out and rides a motorcycle. And that's Arnold's, that's the Terminator's entrance to the opening of the live show. So my buddy put me onto this job. He's like, I can't do it, and I know you're good with that stuff. So as we're doing all the practice rappels for it, it was it's fairly high. It was probably rappelling down 200 feet. Aussie rappel face first. I get the same speech from some of the producers there. They're all interested in what I'm going to do, and they said, "Yeah, we got some stunt guys up at the hill, but they're not like you guys, And I was like, I literally still work there. I was doing this, they didn't know that. I thought I'm gonna lose credibility with them if I tell them that, because so many guys come out of a lot of guys come out of those live shows and have a good career. Some guys just stay there and end up being, kind of like, they just get trapped there. But
is that? I think I've watched some of these live shows. You're talking about like if you go to Disneyland or Disney World, fill in the blank, and you can go see. I think I've seen like the Pirates of the Caribbean one, where they're doing high falls off of the crow's nest or something like that into the water.
Yep.
Is that a pretty traditional path for somebody who wants to become a stuntman?
Yeah.
Like that would be the entry level to get started?
It's not the only way, but it's a way. Yeah.
How did you get into that? I mean, obviously you're from the UK.
Yep.
Where'd you grow up in the UK?
A town called Marlow. It's like 30 miles west of London. No one's ever heard of it, so I'll just say near London.
And then into the UK military. Did you come from a military family, or was that a divergence from your family path?
My dad had been in the army as the national service, like the draft. It was mandatory when at his age, so he did his 2-3 years or something.
Yeah. What drew you to it?
I was from a small town, and it was a way out, and then it seemed like a way of adventure without having to do all the planning yourself. You know, at that age, I wasn't resourceful enough to go and do it on my own, but
I don't think they should put that on a recruiting poster. No. Adventure, but don't worry, we'll handle all the planning.
No, the recruiting process have a lot to answer for.
And what path did you choose in the military in the UK?
I went in the Navy, and I was what's called a clearance diver.
I know almost nothing about obviously the U.S. Navy I know about. UK Navy, what would that be equivalent to, the clearance diver?
Well, you might know this more than me. So, because as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, people in the Navy that dive are SEALs. You have hard hat.
There used to be hard hat, to my knowledge. They still have, I believe, like a testing, group or unit where they do some hard hat diving, but it is my understanding that hard hat diving has gone away.
Oh, it has?
They still have Navy divers, though.
Well, okay, so Navy divers. Are Navy divers different from EOD?
Oh, man, this is getting outside of my wheelhouse. I think so. I think you can go. So I have a buddy who lives in Bozeman, John Barklow. He was a Navy diver. He ended up, he knows Twite well.
Okay.
Also, he ran the cold weather training facility up in Kodiak. He is not an EOD trained individual. So I'm going to say yes, they are different. Even though I am sure that part of EOD training probably is diving, much like part of SEAL training is diving, but it's not really our core competency.
Right. So I think because the Royal Navy is so much smaller, a clearance diver does maybe a few things that different branches of the US Navy would do. So yeah. I did do EOD, and I did do hard hat diving, and I did also use rebreathers, and we would do some of the things you probably know what the SBS is. Mm-hmm. So they really are the sort of equivalent of SEALs, although we did do occasional combat swims with sticking limpet mines on. But ultimately, we used our rebreathers for EOD for mine clearance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, I would say you're wearing multiple hats, an equivalent of multiple jobs in the U.S. Navy. Yeah, like
and I've thought about this since. It's actually great because there's not many diving jobs where you could one day be wearing a hard hat, another day be wearing a rebreather, or doing seabed searches or EOD. And we did, there was an Army EOD and a Navy EOD, and I was on my first assignment after the school was the Portsmouth clearance diving team, Pompey Bomb team, we'd call it. And our job was just to go out and we covered the whole south and west coast. And if any ordnance was found or washed up, or mines, World War II mines were still getting trawled up by fishermen. So
that would not be awesome to have come up in your net.
No.
Fuck.
No, it wouldn't. And that was my first job, was a German ground mine.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd that work out for you?
It's great.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're still here, so it went as planned.
Yeah, it was great. It was my first job, my first on the road job, as they called it, and I was pretty junior, so I didn't expect that I would get tasked with doing it. But we got out there, and the boss said, "I want you to do this one, Tim." I was like, "Really? Awesome."
Trial by fire, if you will.
Yeah.
Underwater.
Yeah. No, it's what, but that's what you signed up for.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. That was like, people were jealous if you got to do that. That's an assignment you want to do.
Yeah, you took book knowledge and you applied it into the real world. When those opportunities are limited, yeah, people get pissed.
Yeah, and because one thing about EOD is that it sort of really doesn't matter. It's the one job in the military that I can think of that's exactly the same whether it's peacetime or wartime.
I'd say the only difference is...
Or chef.
You're a chef. In wartime, you might be getting shot at while you're
That's
trying
true.
to do your job.
That is, but as a clearance diver, like, you know, when you dive, when
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I should have clarified that. But it's not going well if you're getting shot at as a clearance diver. So.
If you're underwater, you're going to be okay.
Right.
It's not all that Hollywood shit where the bullets are going like you're taking a breath and going underwater and the bullets are still hitting you. That's a different story, though. How long did you stay in the military?
5 years.
And what was the reasoning for getting out?
I'd done everything I could do in that clearance diving branch. The promotion just meant less diving. It meant less doing the job, more administrative.
More paper, as is the way in the U.S. military as well.
And there was, 5 years. It was either, I stay in for the run. I didn't do I could have done less. I was a potential, as I was enlisted, I had an opportunity to go the officer route, which actually is, I know you went that route. Yep. It's a bigger deal in the UK. It's still very much a class system. Yeah. So turning that down was considered, what are you doing? You're like chucking away the golden opportunity of a lifetime. But I don't want to. Being a diving officer would have been, you do even less diving.
No, you manage other people diving, from my understanding. Yeah, if you really enjoyed the execution of the job, then yeah, you probably would want to. It's a common thing. I was actually discussing it with somebody not too long ago. A lot of the junior guys, they never want to advance. They just want to.
Right.
But the problem is you have to, and it's tough when you're in that moment to realize you can have even more impact and influence if you do advance and you use your influence smartly. Yeah.
And pilots are the same way. They often avoid advancement because they want to keep flying.
Yeah, and then it's, they'll get to the end of their retirement and they walk with their experience as opposed to maybe turning back around and giving that experience to somebody else.
Yeah.
Were you already thinking about come over to the U.S. while you were serving, or is that a decision you made later on?
The seed had planted that I wanted to be a stuntman. I didn't know anything about it.
How did this seed plant, Mr. Rigby?
I would watch movies, Bond movies. I would see the stunts, and I would think, I think I would like to do that. But in England, among my friends, I would never say it because you're going to get a lot of, yeah, sure you would. But I got through my training in the Navy. I was a pretty average athlete that just trained really hard and kind of, I was probably nobody more surprised than me that I actually made it through because it had a high attrition rate. But what that gave me was it gave me a little bit more confidence in myself because I probably didn't have that much confidence when I went in, and I was kind of surprised to see people quitting because I was like, I'm a likely candidate to quit. And then you'd see guys that were like, well, that guy's tougher than me, that guy's tougher than me. Oh wait, he just quit. Maybe I'm tougher than I thought I was. Yeah. Well, I've heard you talk, and I not everyone's the same. There's people that were like, nothing was going to stop me. I was going to make it no matter what. But I can't honestly say that. I would just hoped. And every week that went by, I was like, oh, I'm still here.
I think a lot of people can say that. The reality of what actually was going on in between their ears, hard to say. I can say for myself, all I ever wanted to do was be a SEAL since I was 11. When training would suck, I never thought about quitting. But when I did see people that would quit, it was motivation for me to keep going. I think the variable is, when you start seeing it impact other people, what does it do to you? Because I saw the other side of the coin, even in my own Buds class. I've talked about this. We had a guy in my class who was a rollback. So he just was like this safe of knowledge that we could never have attained. He made it like 3 days into Hell Week, allegedly. And he was one of the first people to quit in Hell Week, if not the first person to go ring the bell. We were getting surf tortured. They have now changed the term to condition, where you're locked arms, you're in the surf zone, and it's just breaking over you for hours at a time. When he quit, it started a line of people going after him, who I think in their head were thinking, if he can't make it, there's no way that I can too. Because maybe they put too much into how he talked about himself or too little into how they thought of themselves. I don't know what was going on there. Whereas other people, to include myself, when I saw him take off running, I was like, oh, fuck you. Like, it was just motivation for me, as opposed to, it didn't undercut what I thought I was capable of. It made me feel like I was capable of more. And I think that varies between each person.
Yeah. It's a fascinating case study, and I've listened to your podcast. I've listened to you talk about when you went back as an instructor, and of all the knowledge that's now available. Because when we went through, we had no knowledge of what was coming. We had a bunch of rumors
called rumor intelligence.
Yes,
known to not be accurate.
Not accurate, but and horrifying. You know, there were these. Your mind would be spinning about what was, but you just didn't know what was coming for, what was expected. And then there's the guys that I remember when guys would quit. Friends of mine that we'd made drunken pacts with. You don't let me quit, I won't let you quit. And they're like, boom, done. And I remember looking at two of them going, what's up? And they were just like, fuck this. I'm like, I don't know. It was a trip, and I always think that the U.S. Navy has a way cooler way of explaining it. Like you have a Hell Week. We did the same thing, but it's called Live In Week.
Live In Week?
Live In.
What? Where does that name come from?
Because you live in at the island. No, it's like, why can't we call it Hell Week? It sounds cooler. It sounds more accurate.
It's an interesting crucible. I did enjoy going back and seeing the students go through the training that didn't make sense to me when I went through as a student, because I mean, man, by the time I went back as an instructor, I have to only assume now that the amount of information available to potential candidates is exponentially more than was even. So I was there, I got picked up my commission in 2008. So I was there 6, 7, left in 8. There were already websites dedicated to almost a day by day, hour by hour.
Right.
At this point, 2021, I have to imagine that it's like this is what BUD/S actually is. I don't know if it is a benefit to people to preload that information.
I don't know either. I just know that none of us had ever breathed off a regulator, and we're like getting flung in the water. and by the way, zero training is in the pool. It's all in the saltwater lake or the ocean.
Really?
100% of it.
Yeah, we went with the controlled environment of the pool first, and then the basically controlled environment of the San Diego Bay.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that you guys did your training just straight up in salt water.
Yeah, and it was freezing. It was really cold, and it was all in dry suits. There's no wet suits, but ill-fitting dry suits with leaks. The crap gear.
Yeah.
When you get out onto a team, you really learn how to be, because you can't do a job if you're freezing all the time.
I suspect that they knew that the wetsuits and dry suits were ill-fitting, that they were cracked, and that you guys were freezing, because that was actually the point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, it was interesting to go back and watch. I saw it time and time again. I would see probably Division I level athletes who probably could have taken a different path and been multimillionaires 3 to 4 years down the road. Gone. Had nothing to do with physical ability. They would crack on evolutions that I never stopped being surprised by it. And then you would see this total gray man where average weight, below average height, below average ability to impress you as an instructor at anything, just chipping away.
Yeah, that's
at
me.
The 180-day pie. It was me too. I mean, I think I weighed 155 pounds when I started BUD/S. I think I weighed 170 when I got out. Like, trust me, I was not a specimen that anybody was going to put inside of the Smithsonian. Be like, hey, look at this dude. It's like they were like, Jesus Christ, have you eaten enough today? But those are, and then I look back at the community of people I came from. Almost all of them are like that. There are some people who are literally calendar and poster boys, which we mock and make fun of at all times when we see them. But other than that, it's exceedingly average people that are asked to do some pretty exceptional things. And the training works. It's an interesting machine, and I hope that they never change it because it works.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So, and what was it that got you over to the U.S. I mean, obviously you knew you wanted to be a stuntman. Did you apply for a job first, or did you just go full send? I'm coming to the U.S. and I'll figure it out when I get there.
That's exactly what I did.
Burn the boats on the shore?
I did. Yeah. Yeah, I had no... actually, I went to Universal Studios and watched the Miami Vice stunt show And
what year is this?
This would be 92.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would be...
I was a freshman in high school, just FYI.
Right. Yeah, I'm old. And then I met a guy there that I started training with. I persuaded him to train me, and he had a facility. So I started learning trampoline and sword work, movie picture fights, high falls, all this kind of stuff. And then I actually went back to the UK and made a brief attempt to pursue a stunt career there. Got a bunch of roadblocks, and then just, I had made some connections in the US, so I just went for it. And I ended up getting the guy that was training me was the Miami Vice show. He was the one of the main characters in the show, the Sonny Crockett character in this stunt show. And they were auditioning. I don't know, this was a couple of years after that. They were auditioning, and I had just, meanwhile, I started working in the marina, in Marina Del Rey, cleaning boats. World's shittiest diving job you could have.
Were you literally with like a tank and a scraper?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
It's the worst. And it's the worst. It's motivating though, because you can only go up from there.
Yeah.
I think it was about. So I ended up working. Cut it short. I got the live show, and then you mentioned Disneyland. Then I started working at Disneyland because one of the guys at Miami Vice show was the stunt coordinator of the Disneyland live show, and so there was a pirate ship came out where they did all the high falls, and I was actually Captain Hook in that show. Yeah, we did a high wire sword fight and then swinging around. It was fun.
I was going to say, it seems like if you're into that type of thing, that's a badass job.
It was the best.
Did they pay well?
They paid okay. They didn't pay movie money, but it was better than scraping boats, and I was doing what I love to do. And at the time I was working, then the Waterworld show came around, and I advanced up the roster, so I was technically a full-time guy there, which is not really a full-time job. You work 3 days one week and 4 the next, and it was like a giant playground. Between shows, I'd be out there riding jet skis and doing high falls and just using it to, take advantage of this training facility to get my skills down. Because in the beginning of your stunt career, you have to humble yourself. You're surrounded by really talented guys, and the guys I got started with were a bunch of really talented guys. And here's me thinking, well, I'm a Navy diver, I've done some parachuting, I was a fairly decent rock climber at the time, I'll be a great stuntman. And then I got here, I was like, well, you don't know anything, and I just needed to start training. So I really emphasized the training for several years before. Even though I was doing the live shows, I didn't look for movie work because I wanted to be ready, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. And when a job came up, I wanted to be able to do it. I know almost nothing about the world that you have worked your way through. Are there like academies or schools for people who want to pursue that path? Not really. I mean, over the years, there have been stunt schools that they've kind of come around, but they're not usually that reputable, because you can make a much better living being a stuntman, stunt coordinator, than you could teaching it. So, but it seems like a logical step for a new guy. And if a stunt school comes up, I know friends of mine that went to stunt schools that had bad reputations, but they went anyway. They learned something, and then they learned more when they got out. I mean, they're a bit of a ripoff, and I don't know if any of them that are happening right now. It's not a quick answer when someone says, "I want to be a stuntman. What do I need to do?" It's not. There's no clear path getting there. You could get a different story from different guys. Well, I mean, your background, I'm sure, helped, but I think your headspace was correct, because you can have all of those skills, the diving, the rock climbing, the parachuting. That doesn't necessarily mean you're prepared to step in front of the camera lens and do that stuff safely, or other things that they may ask you to do inside of the confines of what's going to happen on the other side of the lens. I think I have very limited experience around any type of TV, movie, any of that stuff. But
one, it moves slower than I think most people. Way slower. It's a lot of hurry up and wait, which we're experts at from the military.
Yeah.
Very segmented. I didn't realize you have to do everything at least twice because you got to flip the world. I was like, yes, we're almost done with the day. And people are like, no, dude, we're only halfway. I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, we have to flip all the cameras. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to Crafty. I'm not here anymore. But it's, man, there's a lot.
There is a lot.
There is a lot. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I applaud you guys for being able to do what you do. I have a couple buddies who have gone down that path, whether, you know, technical advising side or actually stunt stuff. And on the stunt side, the description of the things that they do and the amount of training that they do, or the pulley systems that they're creating, or the pick harnesses, or like, holy shit, man. Yeah,
there's a lot of high-tech stuff in it. And, you know, sometimes you'll work on a job because it does sound like an interesting job, and it is. It's a dream job. But like everything, there's a good side and a bad side. And sometimes you'll be on a job where, you know, it's some battle scene and you're soldier number 4 in the background near an explosion, and you just have to be sort of heads up. And then, you know, people will be watching like, well, I could do that. I'm like, yeah, you could do that. But this guy is just being asked to light himself on fire and then go off the tailgate of that truck and land on his back without putting a hand down. Would you do that? And it's on the asphalt.
How often are people getting hurt doing that? Even trained professionals?
Often.
I was going to say, there's some mileage on your guys' bodies. Even, again, when you're watching movies, if you know what you look for, you're like, oh, that guy has knee pads under his pants, and like you can see all the protective gear. But they also just threw themselves out of a moving car.
Yeah.
So I don't care how much foam and plastic you have on you, that mileage is going to add up.
Oh, it does. There's a category in the World Stunt Awards called Hardest Hit, and it's my favorite to watch. You would love watching it with your sense of humor. You should, and you just watch guys that you know. I just voted this year because it was all online, and there was a fantastic guy. Literally took a reaction in a fight, jumped as high as he could in the air, and didn't land flat on his back, lands on the back of his neck, tacoed his feet over his head. It just is what it is. You're not looking at that going, what's the technique there? The technique is just do that.
And hope for like cervical spine flexibility.
Good Lord. It's, you know, I mean,
sounds like it's a young man's game, Tim.
Yeah.
Well, you've progressed to coordinating, I would say, which is probably the long-term viable option. Probably not for everybody, though. I mean, how many stunt coordinators can there be?
There's not many, I was very fortunate in my career because I had a very, well, I'm also still doing stunts. I don't exclusively coordinate. I'm not doing everything, but coordinating's a pain in the ass, and it's stressful because you're putting people in harm's way, and it's for a movie. It's not like, you know, it's not like what you guys did. You have more of a noble cause to put yourself in harm's way. It's more, you're doing it for a movie, but that's what everyone signed up for. And, you know, sometimes that director just wants one more take or 10 more takes. And this guy is just the guy that just did, that guy that I saw the video of him doing that flat back. I've seen that many, many times. That wasn't the only time he did it.
Oh, for sure.
He may have done that 10 times.
I don't care who you are. That's shortening the serviceability of your neck.
Yeah. Yeah. So the mileage is definitely there, but I've always, you know, I've been injured and recovered.
Yeah.
And you've got to stay on top of your injuries and do your rehab. Fatalities are rare.
You hear about them every once in a while.
Yeah. But they're a lot more common in base jumping.
Yeah. How does it end up generally terminating in a fatality in a stunt crew? Does something go catastrophically wrong, or is it just a risk that wasn't seen?
It could be anything. It could be all of that. You know, there's always...
Because there are safety measures in place, and shit, there's safety people all over the place, at least on the sets that I've been on.
Yeah. So when you look back, like it's like looking at the NTSB reports of a crash. You go, okay, what could have been done differently?
Yeah.
And you have to look at those things honestly. And sometimes, I mean, I've looked at some incidents when you go, the honest answer is, okay, now we know that that happened, but I don't blame anybody for not knowing that at the time. Because the thing about a stunt is everyone's a bit different. So you can be a base jumper and you've jumped all 4 objects, so you have a sort of an expectation of what can and can't happen. But if you're doing a stunt, you know, you're turning a car over and you're doing it in the midst of a car chase, and it's going to turn over differently every time. And there are, you know, once a car's tumbling across the ground, who knows where it's going to go?
Yeah, nobody's controlling that.
Yeah, you're now a passenger. I mean, when every time I turn a car over, the moment it's flipping, I let go and grab my shoulder harness because I'm no longer steering it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
You're literally a passenger in a metal football that's been punted down the road.
I'm going to let you guys have that. Any car rolls that I do will be accidental driving on my part, not on a movie set. Slightly, potentially moderate chance of irresponsibility on my side.
Well, some of them are... Have you ever flipped a car?
In training evolutions in the military.
Did you really?
Yeah, that wasn't part of the evolution either.
How was that for the career?
I got in trouble. I got in a lot of trouble. I was in the car by myself. It's fine. It was okay. It was not a car that was designed to flip, or that, like I said, it wasn't part of the evolution. So I got a stern talking to. I believe that speed increases handling, and that was not the case in that particular moment. Yeah. And then, you know, oversteering is a thing. Overcorrecting is.
Yeah, it is.
It got a little loosey-goosey on me. And then finally I was just so far behind it and got like twisted up. I was like, fuck me, here we go.
I wish there was video of that.
No, there's no video of that. And I actually regret that I told you about it. But it actually, it happened. That was the beginning and end of my stunt career. So what was your first movie job?
My first movie was George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle.
It's a kid's movie.
All right. What did they have you doing?
I was the stranded parachutist dangling off the Oakland Bay Bridge as George, played by Brendan Fraser, who's doubled by my buddy Joey Preston, swings down to rescue me. But because it was such a wide shot, people driving across the bridge literally thought I was some wingnut that had just parachuted into the bridge. They didn't know it was a movie. The movie helicopters were the movie helicopter had a News 4, Channel 4 on it because it was all in this wide shot. All of the crew were dressed as firemen so that it didn't look like it was a movie. So people were yelling at me. People were driving by because the traffic was bad and they were like, "You idiot," because their commute was now ruined.
You asshole.
I know.
That's awesome.
And then the stunt guy that was running up the fat cable to start his swing, some people were yelling at him to jump.
Really?
Yeah, they thought he was a suicide jumper and they were trying to encourage him.
I have actually heard that on the Coronado Bay Bridge, which is a bridge. I think it's the Golden Gate is the #1 jumped off bridge for suicide in the U.S.
I think so.
The Coronado Bridge is not that far behind it. I have seen people sitting on the edge, and because people were late for work, they're like honking their horn at the person and like, make up your fucking mind. It's like, wow. Wow.
Well,
everybody can make their own choices in life. I don't know if I would make that particular choice.
No, I wouldn't. No, that's a little harsh.
It is a little harsh. So where to go after George of the Jungle?
Then after George of the Jungle, my next feature was Titanic, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you do for that one?
We were down in Rosarito, Mexico, and I was only on it for a couple of weeks. And when they were lowering the lifeboats, they were kind of lowering them precariously, like one end first and everyone tumbling into each other. So I was just dressed in a tuxedo, kind of piling into each other.
Yeah.
And I did get the call to go back, but I'd been given a call for a movie called Sphere, which didn't really do much, but it was a great pivotal movie for me because I worked for this legendary stunt coordinator and he took a liking to me. And that was the whole movie was underwater.
Right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and it was using hard hat gear. So the movie, we spent 4 months in these tanks up at a Navy base in Vallejo in Northern California, and the stunt coordinator was a guy called Ronnie Rondell, who's a legend. I mean, he's an absolute legend, and having a guy like that kind of taking a liking to you,
it's going to help.
Was very helpful.
It sounds like, from an outside perspective, it's a combination of who you are, what you know, and then who you know as well when it comes to progression inside of your particular aspect of Hollywood.
It is, but the who you know thing is thrown around a little bit too much because no one knows anyone until they know them. And me coming from the UK, I didn't know anyone. But have I got jobs since because of who I know? Yeah, I have. Mm-hmm. But the stunt business is it's a very small aspect of Hollywood, and it's a skill-based profession. So you can't network your way into a job because you have to be able to produce.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do what's required. So, and I like that. I mean, there are a few guys that can kind of skirt by as, never really doing anything major, but as my friend doubled Arnold for years, he said, you can avoid it for a while, but sooner or later you're going to have to do a stunt.
Fair.
Yeah.
How many stuntmen would you say that there are?
Well, I know years ago when I was getting started, I'd met an older stunt guy who I asked that question to, and he came up with some statistic that, because we're all in the Screen Actors Guild in SAG. So he said, I think he thought there was like 10,000 people that checked the box stuntman, and at the time there was maybe 200 making a living. I don't know what those numbers are today. It's probably more because the movie's bigger. There's more content, but there's not many. I mean, it's everybody either knows everybody or knows of. There's always new people coming in, but
yeah,
it's a fairly small.
I was going to say there might be 10,000 people who could check that box, but I bet it's in the hundreds, if that, of the ones doing the daily, every day on the big productions.
I'd agree with that. I think it's in the hundreds. It's certainly, I would say, less than 1,000.
Well, I'd have to imagine when you're coordinating, you're probably working with a large portion of the same people over and over and over.
All the time.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're going to know when the new blood comes in there.
Yeah, you work, especially if you're going away on location, you're going to want to know, hey, I want to bring this guy, but he's a good fight guy, but he can also ride a motorcycle, and we have a fire burn. He's good with fire. We have, and we've got a driving sequence, and he's a good car guy. So you have to be versatile when you go away with a small crew because everyone's going to have to do everything.
Of all the things you just listed, whether the car, or the fire, or the falling, or the fighting, what carries the highest level of risk?
High falls are fairly dangerous. They're sort of going away because of wires now. They used to be,
and their ability just to remove them with CGI.
Yeah, because high fall requires a giant airbag, and you can't look at the ground. So yeah, there've been some fatalities over the years with high falls. Car stuff it's not. You can get your bell rung for sure.
Yeah.
Most dangerous.
Like for you as a stunt coordinator, if somebody comes to you with a project and says, hey, this is the movie we're getting ready to do, and these are the scenes that we're going to shoot. Like, what is it that would, from an outside, the first look at a project that would kind of bring the hair up on the back of your neck? Like, that's going to be a tough problem to solve.
Well, me with knowing what I know, if there was a base jump in it, honestly.
Yeah, okay. I could buy that.
Because I've coordinated where there have been base jumps, and it's very stressful.
Yeah. Well, it's because you know exactly what's going on.
Yes.
Personally.
And I have to then, put my base head on and talk to the stunt coordinator if I'm there as the aerial coordinator, and I have to go, hey, just so you know, let me put it in your language. This is more dangerous than a 70-mile-an-hour car turnover. what this guy's about to do, just so that you can relate to it. And they're like, oh, really? Yeah. So we need to kind of pay it the same attention.
Like, what are you talking about? They just jump off and their parachute opens.
Yeah.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Or you get a 180 into a building strike.
Yeah.
Have fun with that shit. Yeah, it's the stories I have from buddies that work in the stunt world. It's like, you did what? How it blows my mind, some of the stuff that not only that they're asked to do, but they're able to pull off.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you go through the some of the earlier jobs I did, stuff I was asked to do, and I look back, because at the time I got asked to do some stuff that was a real gut check, and I remember thinking, that doesn't seem very safe, and I'm not super comfortable doing that. These are all internal monologues, and I'm thinking, and I'm also saying, hey, you signed up for this. You said you wanted to be a stuntman. Do you want to be a stuntman or not? And then I go ahead and do it, and it worked out, luckily. And then years later, you look back and go, I was right. That was a terrible idea. It should have never been done that way. I know you persuaded yourself, you signed up for this. I would never have anybody do that, because you work for there's a similar mentality. I hear you talking all the time, about the characteristics of your former job. And I'm not trying to equate it in any way. I don't want to offend anybody, but there are some similarities in the personalities, and it's like people's identities wrapped up in it.
Oh yeah,
that's very similar, and the inability to, say no to something that's not a great idea. Sometimes,
I bet the personalities and the thought process and the headspace and the characteristics between what you do and my old job are defined by their similarities, not their differences.
Yeah, and I want to be very careful there, because I've got nothing but respect for what you and your colleagues did, and I'm not in any way saying it's the same. There are dangers, and it's like I said earlier, it's not.
I'm just talking about the type of person that's probably drawn to that type of job. I think there's it's a life that from the outside could look very exciting.
Right.
At many times, and you're off, like you said. Why worry about the planning? We'll plan for you. This is a life of adventure.
Right.
Like, oh, here's another job for me to do. Why not?
Yeah.
Physically based chat. Like I think I could easily see somebody who went the path that I took, looking at the path that you went, and going, oh, damn, that sounds awesome too.
Yeah.
They'd be drawn to both, I think.
That's what was trying to articulate. And then, but imagine that, where there's a consistency with what you guys did, because there's a consistency to the training. But you work for one stunt coordinator and then you work for another one. You're like, well, that last guy did it a whole different way. The good guys all do it the same way, but you don't know that when you're starting out. You don't know who you're working for or what,
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
No, you don't.
So by the time, we met, I think it was 2005 on the set of 300.
Yeah.
I think is where we met, through the wizard known as Mark Twight.
Yeah.
Who he legitimately looks like Gandalf with his long white hair. Love him to death.
Does he have long hair now?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen him in a while.
I haven't seen a picture of him recently, but it's awesome. Like, he is fully snowmaned out. I love it. I'm saying it with I wish I had the ability to do that. And I'm sure I'm headed that way soon, because my hair is graying by the moment. But yeah, so at that phase, that was probably 2005. Were you still in the day-to-day stuntman phase, or were you working your way towards coordinating at that time?
No, still fully into stunts. That was an example of the variety. That whole movie was just fights and weapons. And
the entire movie. Yeah, I'm thinking about the movie.
Yeah.
Yep. All you guys were doing was
and you get I've had whole movies that have been underwater. I've had whole movies that have been driving, whole movies that have been fights. That variety is really fun. But 300, that was the first time stuntmen had ever had a personal trainer.
You guys were getting after it.
I remember a workout you put me through too. I do.
I do not, so I apologize.
It was deadlifts and box jumps, and you wrecked me. But at the beginning, when Mark Twight came on board, he had his work cut out, because egos, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure probably you tell me, but when I don't know how he was received initially in the military, but I know the stunt guys are like, I don't need to train. I train myself. I've been training my whole life. I don't need,
It was almost as if there was only two camps. He showed up and people were like, fuck, I recognize the error in my ways and I'm going to commit to this. Or people saying, nope, I want no part of that. There was very little in between.
Agreed.
So he was polarizing in the military, incredibly helpful to those that could get outside of their ego and listen and adapt. And I'm sure it was, like you said, it's
exactly the same.
And the biggest thing was the ego, the people who could see outside of themselves and realize, okay, maybe I've been investing some time, energy, and effort in a path that wouldn't be as good. I'm going to humble myself, get crushed, and go down this new road.
Well, I think I cut people some slack in the beginning because how many fitness fads have there been over the years?
Oh, they're ongoing right now, constantly.
People are like, all right, it's not that hard. You eat right and you move around a little bit. But when I started doing his workouts and I was just annihilated, and I'm thinking, I'm in. This is a sufferfest, and I've always kind of been drawn to that. And
that annihilation is an interesting test for people as well, because it will either become the biggest stumbling block that they can't get through, or motivation. Because I was the same way when I first found those workouts. I remember I found it on the internet. It was called Jonesworthy.
Yeah, Jim Jones.
Yeah, and it was pull-ups, kettlebell swings, and squats. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it started high and it cascaded its way down. I think it started at like 84, and then the numbers didn't matter. It was early on, and I remember doing that workout, and I was at my house the next day, and I was trying to go from upstairs to down, and I fell down the stairs. Because I bent my leg, and I've had many days like that since, where like you go to sit on the toilet and you're like, my legs don't work, and you smash into the back of the toilet because you're so wrecked from the workout. To me, it's like, wow, that's what I need. That's what I want to go after. That's where the benefit is. Other people feel like that, and they say, I don't want any piece of it whatsoever.
Yeah, and you felt like that as a guy that was probably already in quite good shape.
I thought I was, but it was different shape. I was still, up until the point where I got hurt at work, it was back and by his chest and tries. And let's get a run in, right? Let's get some show muscles like up front here. Let's really focus on what you can see in the mirror and ignore the money makers behind you. And I mean, the first time I ever did like a squat, I remember using a leg press machine before. And then the first time I ever did air squats, I'm like, how am I this sore? Let alone the first time I did lunges and I thought I needed a wheelchair. I mean,
and you look at it on paper and you go, we need to double this. This is not enough. We're going to be done in 12 minutes. This is not enough. Ask me again in 12 minutes.
I've had people say that to me, and I go, shooter's choice. If you want to double it, go ahead. And then they do. And halfway through, they're like, I'm good. I'm like, you're not good.
No, you have to finish.
This evolution
ends. You
have
to finish.
When the evolution ends.
I mean, how many times have you started one of those and you're thinking, now that you know, hey, don't overestimate, because you've done that before. And you think, no, let me go for, I don't want to go too easy, but let me be realistic. And then you get a third the way through and you go, I don't think I can finish. And then you always do. But
but that's a mental game more than a physical one.
Yeah.
No, Mark is, God, he's a genius when it comes to that stuff.
He really is. And I know you won't remember this, but I didn't know any of that field. I'd never heard the term CrossFit.
Yep.
But you did know about it, and you had a CrossFit sweatshirt or something, or a t-shirt, and you came in like, I'm going to wear this to tweak Dwight. And I didn't even know what that meant. I'm like, what? Why would it tweak him? I don't even know what CrossFit is. But there should have been.
God, that does sound like something I would do.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. That was my first ever time at any type of production, because Mark had come to the command and done I think I was able to get like 5 or 6 people to come. Triple S being one of them. And that's why he and I became such good friends, or a part of it. I mean, we both loved jumping, and we loved working out hard, and quite frankly, introducing it to new people and just fucking smashing them into the ground. But I remember him coming, and he brought Kurt with him. Kurt came. And so I remember pitching it to the command, like, hey, I need to go get my level 2 up in Canada, which is where 300 was shot. It was where did they shoot it actually?
Montreal.
Okay, yeah. So I remember flying into Canada, and first time I'd ever been on a movie set. I loved it, man. They would bring me shakes like every 2 hours. I remember them bringing me little things of like cheese and almonds. I'm like, this is where
It was the greatest.
I need to live here forever. And Mark would just sit there and just write workouts on the wall, and different people would cycle through. I'm like, is there any other job? Like, this is the job you need to have.
I've never had one since. All you had to do was eat what they gave you and do what they tell you, and you will get in and not get injured, and you'll can't help but getting. Everyone showed up in good shape, but
let's not use the term everyone. Let's see, how can I broadly work my way around this? A lot of people are on the performance end of a camera. There's stunt people and actors, and maybe not all of them take it seriously, and maybe there's ways to cheat results. And it like I said, those workouts,
you're right about that.
They're a very good window into the soul.
Yes.
If you want to look into the mirror and say, I'm going to go through the hard work, or maybe I'll eat this chicken breast that comes in a syringe. Which, and I'll be honest about it, when people, like, if your job isn't in front of a camera, like if they came to me and said, hey, we want you to be fill in the superhero, like Thor or whatever, like you're gonna have to be running around with your shirt off, I would immediately go find a doctor and say, hey, I'm gonna work my ass off, but I'm also gonna if you're gonna pay me millions of dollars, and my only job is to do this, I want you to safely on-ramp me for this and then off-ramp me. Like, if that's your job, okay. If you're just a bitch, not okay.
Right. I mean, it's not illegal. It's not like you're in the Olympics. You can,
No. It's just interesting to see who. It's the red. What is it in the Matrix? It's the red pill and the blue pill, right? Which, one of them is revolving hard work and the person handing you the shake, and the other one is less hard work, and who knows the long-term health consequences, but they are yours to swallow.
And then that's where we met, and then we discussed. Kurt said, "I think you're gonna like this guy because he's a skydiver."
Yeah, and we actually started. You guys were up there for a touch longer. We didn't really jump.
We didn't jump up there.
No, not there. It was a couple years later, actually.
Yeah,
but we stayed in touch for sure.
Yep.
And then wasn't Scott Cosgrove working up there on the ropes as well?
Yep.
He passed, right?
He did.
It wasn't like a catastrophic incident, was it, or was it more of a natural?
It was. He had an accident, and he was pretty broken up. He fell from a significant height on a soundstage and got pretty broken up, and he passed a couple of years later, but I think it was residual from that.
Complications from. You want to talk about a man who was a wizard climbing or with ropes. I had the great fortune to do a few trips with him.
Yeah, he was a mountain goat.
Oh my God. I've always been baffled, well, and maybe I shouldn't be, because it's, for aviation or skydiving or base jumping, you could probably look at a problem externally and figure out the solution. I'd be on a rock face I'm scared.
Right.
Climbing, he'd just be up and he'd be like, hey, use this number, use the number 8 cam. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? Because I would probably go 1, no, 2, no, 3, no. I was always amazed by his ability, or anybody at that level, actually, to have that level of knowledge and also be able to execute it in circumstances that have serious consequences. Yeah. He was cool. I was
He's
bummed.
A great guy.
Yeah.
I worked a lot with Scott over the years.
And then where'd it go for you after 300?
300,
because shit, we're still talking 16 years ago.
I know. So, so the stunt coordinator of 300, Damon Caro, good friend of mine. I don't know if you remember him.
I do. Yep.
He was one of those original group of guys that I got started with. And the director, Zach, who was a great guy. Zach went on to do a bunch of other movies. Damon was his stunt coordinator. Damon basically took me with him and just said, you're going to be my assistant stunt coordinator, and sort of almost dragged me kicking and screaming into stunt coordinating, and it was very cool of him. He even said, I'm doing this so that you stop doing some of this shit, and I'm going to protect you from yourself.
Do you see people who, now that you're in that role, do you see people that are just smashing themselves into pieces and the tail end of their life is going to be miserable? From a physical perspective, meaning there's so many miles that are going to go on the bus that it's not going to be able to drive. Yes, but I will be honest. I've got to give credit where it's due. The guys, the older generation, are really broken up. Like, there's guys that are going to have some tweaks in my generation for sure. But the guys that came before me, I mean, these guys were doing
saddle falls off horses in full gallops, you know, dressed as a Native American in a loincloth.
I mean, is there any way to trick the system on that, or are they just doing it?
They dig the dirt up a little bit.
I was going to say, I mean, what can you do?
And 9 times out of 10, they miss the patch they dug up because the horse is galloping at full speed. And a lot of those guys have had multiple hip replacements, and, you know, it takes its toll. So after that, Damon, we did a movie called Sucker Punch, and then we did Man of Steel, and then we did Batman vs. Superman.
Yep. What was your role in those? Were you still doing stunts behind or in front of the camera, or were you working more behind the camera?
Behind, except I was stunt coordinating, and you know there was a whole underwater sequence on Man of Steel, so I helped train the actors diving. I was coordinating on Batman vs. Superman, but I was also drove the Batmobile.
Did you?
Which was really fun, yeah.
What was that car under the hood?
It was built from the ground up.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That had been a blast to drive.
It was a blast. It really was. It was myself and one other guy did the driving, and the it was. We had to do a lot of testing with that car.
Oh, I bet it was brand new.
They built it, and it had a LS3 motor, a Corvette engine, giant wheels, and there was a lot to figure out because the thing had to be able to drift. So we went out to, we filmed it in Michigan, and they had a Chrysler Proving Grounds out there, so which was this where they would test their new cars. It was very secret because they don't want any prying eyes to look at their prototype cars. So it was perfect for us to test the Batmobile. We were out there for months with the streets that we were going to be doing the chase in. We coned them off, measured them, using the radar guns, had entry speeds, what the RPMs were, what the settings for the suspension was, what the entry speed and exit speed was for each of these corners, and can it be done, because the car was $1 million. So talk about pressure. You don't want to crash it and hurt yourself, and you also don't want to wad that car up either.
Yeah.
So we had that, the Batmobile. I think we had 2 of them, and then we had what was called the Smashmobile, which was built on a dually, and it was a facsimile of the Batmobile. So anytime the Batmobile had to crash, it was this Mad Max looking vehicle that visual effects they said, you know, okay, the wheels are this wide, so they made some hoops out of roll cage so that it had the same footprint, but this could smash into things, because you can't smash into things with an open wheel car and it would just come apart. But
yeah. So it took you guys months to do that. How many total minutes in the movie did that equate to of the Batmobile driving around? 90 seconds?
Maybe. It's not much. It's amazing how much goes into.
That was my point in bringing that up. It's crazy to see how much work goes into something that is compressed down to a flash in the, well, not a flash in the pan, but yeah, I mean, I think back on that movie, it's maybe 2 minutes tops. Yeah.
And then the guys that you would have, I don't know how many people you remember from 300, but the guys that were just stunt guys, Chad was the assistant stunt coordinator. He's the guy, he directed John Wick's. He's now the John Wick director.
Yeah. Oh shit, that's right.
He went on to be a second unit director, now a director, and he's, you know, and then Dave Leach was one of the, just one of the Spartan stunt guys. He ended up becoming a director too. He directed like Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2 and the most Hobbs and Shaw.
How do they make that jump? Is it, I mean, because we're talking a substantial difference in responsibility, obviously. Stuntman, okay, hey, I need to be able to physically perform this. Director, well, maybe I'll shit can this entire project and ruin the millions or hundreds of millions of dollars going into it. How do you make that jump?
Well, a lot of a natural progression would be stuntman, stunt coordinator, then second unit director. And the second unit is all the action. So there's typically not actors on the second unit. So all the Fast and the Furious movies, there'll be a car chase, extensive car. There might even be 2 second unit directors. And I've been on movies where I've been on the second unit, which is usually where a stunt guy wants to be. I've never met any of the lead actors. Like, you're not even in the same location.
I don't know if most people realize that any scene that doesn't directly involve the actors, like, they're not even there.
They're not there.
They might not even be in the same country.
No. And they might come in once in a while to be on what they call the process vehicle, where the car is sat there and they're doing the pretending to drive and you still be stunt guys driving all around them, but so you would go second unit director, but the jump from second unit director is a big one, and it's rare for a stunt guy to do, and it's rare for a second unit director to do, because they get pigeonholed, and they're kind of valuable because the studio knows they can handle that.
Yeah.
And I can get some guy that's creative, maybe come out the commercial world or the music video world, and they can kind of groom some 27-year-old guy to be the director, and this 50-year-old second unit director can kind of hold his hand and help him out. But it's surprising that they don't, because a lot of second unit directors have tried to make that jump and only a few have made it.
I mean, talk about putting just the entire weight of the ship on your shoulders.
Yeah, but you think about it, if you guys already had the weight of a big second unit, which is the budget of a lot of movies, and yet they'll give it to some 27-year-old music video guy.
Yeah.
What's more of a risk?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But they think that, there's a stunt guy stigma, like, hey, how's he going to deal with actors? He doesn't understand the creative art as much. I think there's some of that.
Yeah. Crazy. Let's also not forget you did the ejection seat scene for Iron Man. You were flying that old plane that Tony Stark flew into.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you probably did that jump over Paris, it seemed like.
No, we did that out in Mojave. We flew out of Cal City.
Okay.
So it kind of looks a little bit like Afghanistan out there.
Yeah, because it was basically the bottom half of an ejection seat. You were sit flying with that thing, weren't you?
Yeah, but the reason I had that partial seat was because I had done another job where I was in a full ejection seat. And I may have told you about that, but that was for a movie called Stealth. And that was way more epic than Iron Man in terms of how risky it was.
Was this an aerial scene in a full ejection seat? Okay.
We had effects built 30 seats, and I was potentially going to do it 30 times. And I ended up doing 25 jumps. We did it in Northern California. And I got pitched out the side of a Cessna Caravan, belted into a chair.
They couldn't find a ramp aircraft for you.
Nope. Pitched out the side, strapped into this chair, and
like 4-point harness strapped into this chair.
No,
just a lap belt.
A lap belt. So that it's the rig that you have now.
Yeah, the green one.
The green one. It's a Mirage. It's a Mirage, and that that has a big 3-ring.
Yeah,
and it has but there was a reason for that, and that was that later on I had to wear 2 parachutes, we're getting technical now for people that don't skydive, but I had to have 2 sets of 3 rings on each big D ring. But that jump, so we did some testing out in Cal City, and I was telling this story the other day, and I had the belt that kept me in the chair, because they had a recessed hole in the chair.
Yeah, to make room for the container pack tray.
My container. And then the lift web was dressed up to look like the seat belts of the... So that's why it was OD green like that.
And this was in the movie Stealth?
In the movie Stealth.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you asked about Iron Man, but
I'm just not going to let you get away without saying you were the dude free falling in Iron Man. Because I saw it, I'm like, that's Tim. I could see your face.
Yeah, because I had to do this thing on stage as the pilot. I'm like Viper number 2 or something. But so we did some tests with this 3-ring, had a 3-ring release for the seatbelt. So every time I was going to get rid of the chair, and we had permission to just let it impact every time. And the first jump I did, while I was testing it on the ground, I pulled the release for the 3-ring, and I was pressing my hips against the belt just to see, because I wanted to simulate pressure that I might be spinning, and it didn't release. And
so you had a cable in your hand, and the 3-ring was still together?
I pulled it all the way out, and the 3-ring was still together. And the reason that happened was the little white loop, again, super boring for people that don't know skydiving, but the little white loop was pinched against the buckle of my leg straps. So it wasn't allowing, because with me forcing against it,
it wasn't allowing the tension to be released.
Yeah. And as you know, you just need fingers to stop that last ring going. You don't need much.
Yeah, it's a weight/tension reduction system is really all it is.
And there was a couple of really senior riggers on it, and they're like, "That's not going to happen in the air because there'll be slack induced and then tension, then slack and tension." I remember thinking, "Well, it just happened here. Well, I feel like it could happen in the air."
Yeah, that's not an acceptable explanation whatsoever. However, here's the parachute in harness in the seat, buddy. Why don't you go test it?
I know. Well, again, this is one of those things that I said earlier. And what I did ask for was like, well, I want a second release on there, and they made me a bigger sort of spring, like a giant RSL yachting release, but it had a kind of a little handle on it, and it was kind of hard to get to. And I remember thinking, that's not exactly what I wanted, but I feel like I'm maybe complaining too much here, or so I went for it, and I did the test, and it was fine. But the first filming job up in Northern California, and I don't know if you know Craig O'Brien, camera guy.
Not well, but I know who he is.
He's a good friend of mine. He's a great guy. I pull the handle and a chair doesn't go. And he landed and he's like, Tim, pull the handle. And I stayed in the chair for I went for the secondary release, but it wasn't a big enough. I couldn't find it because it was wedged in behind me.
Oh, man.
And then I went to just manipulating the seatbelt, and then eventually the chair came off. And then when we got down, we changed the system. But that wasn't even the biggest epic of that one. I had to do a jump which required the two parachutes on one big D-ring. And they wanted one filmed from a helicopter. And ultimately, the ejection, as you know, they're round canopies.
Yeah.
So the plan was they were going to send me out. I was going to take like a 3-second delay and then pitch a round canopy.
Which would be that first set of
would be the
risers.
First set. And that was going to be for the opening of the round canopy for the movie, because they wanted, they needed that. And then I was going to cut that one away, cut the chair away, go back into free fall, and then open up my other parachute.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? And we'd also been doing these earlier jumps up high on O2. I've been going for like 21,000 feet. Because this was going to be filmed from the gyro, from the helicopter, I got some fantastic news off the pilot. Said the highest we can go is 9,000 feet. I was like, all right. So now I have a belly-mounted round canopy on my chest. At this point, I have 7 handles. If everything went completely sideways, I would pull all 7.
Yeah.
Because I have the handle to deploy the round parachute.
Yep.
Then I have the cutaway for that round parachute. Then I have the cutaway for the chair. And then I have the emergency cutaway from the chair. And then I got my other 3 handles.
Yeah, which are your normal handles
7.
on your skydiving system.
And I was still, as we went out, I would get pushed out in this chair, and I'd come off the hill, and then it would just basically start. It was Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It would start spinning, and I was like, if this thing, how long of a delay ought I to take? Because I don't want to deploy spinning. And now it's all on me. So anyway, I went out, took like a 3-second delay. And by the way, this round parachute was not packed for a terminal opening. As I get pushed out, I took about a 2-second delay, deploy the hand deploy for the round parachute, and then the chair starts rotating to the side, beginning its spin. It rotates to the side, and now there's friction. So the pilot chute is out, but because it's wrapped around the chair.
Oh my God.
There's friction. And now I'm accelerating. I'm getting to terminal velocity, which wasn't the plan. It was going to be a sub-terminal opening. I'm now probably 8-9 seconds into it, and now as I've rotated, I'm now belly to earth. The parachute's beginning to come out, and this round canopy has wrapped me in the chair. So I'm now in the chair, wrapped up in parachute material
at about 8,000 feet.
And Craig O'Brien is helpless because I've got enough drag out where he can't do anything now, and he's falling away from me. And I just start pulling out this bed sheet and thinking I'm not, I have to keep trying.
Yeah.
And it was a really shitty situation. And eventually I pulled enough material out that the thing cracked open at, maybe a 10, 12-second delay. I had more line twists than I've ever had in my life. My neck was bent down, and I just had this round canopy of line twists all the way up to the top, which I was like, okay, but I got something over my head. I kicked out of them. It took forever because, you know, the suspension line's on a route. It's not as far apart.
Well, and you're in a chair.
Well, the chair had released. There was a
okay, good.
The chair had released because there was the way they'd rigged the round parachute. They'd rigged like an RSL to release the chair. I had a handle to release it if that hadn't worked, but it did release. I kicked out the line twists. Neck was jacked from this opening. It was like doing a slider off terminal jump. And then previously on a previous job, a skydiver had done a cutaway system and he pulled the wrong cutaway. And he then pulled the right one, then went into freefall, then deployed his main that then flew off his back because he'd pre-cut it away.
So it probably just fired direct through the reserve?
Ran out of altitude.
Oh, shit.
And went in. So that was very sad. That guy died. So I was very aware of that. And I'm looking down, looking at my handle, just talking to myself, going, okay, this is definitely the right handle. Definitely. And then I got my hook knife out. I physically got it out. I was like, because if this doesn't work, I'm going to physically start hacking and I don't want to be spinning. And I chopped it, went back into free fall, tracked away in case the chair was somewhere near. I didn't know, where. And then went back to my normal procedure and opened the parachute. And I landed way away from where I was supposed to. And that was, it's a funny story now, but
probably not funny in the moment.
No, it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny afterwards either because I felt sick because I realized I just got lucky.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be doing that kind of thing with my life. This is not what it felt like Russian roulette. And I took a knee when I got down and gathered myself up and was just thinking, and I don't even know if they got the shot at this point. And as I'm walking back, the coordinator came up, he goes, I haven't looked at the cameras, but we're not doing that again. I was like, no argument from me.
Good man. I hope you got a stunt bump that day.
I will say this. That week, I bought my first plane.
Good. I like where you're at.
But then Iron Man came up, and I said, I realize this is very lucrative, and I don't want to do it. And by then, visual effects had come advanced. It was only a couple of years later, but they said, no, could you do it with a partial chair? We'll put these tracking markers on and we'll build the rest. I was like, yeah, I'll do that.
Well, yeah, because that's huge difference in planning and probably risk as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I would imagine that CGI and the impact of that has kind of changed the job for you guys as well.
Yeah, you have to learn, you have to progress and learn and understand it. Because in the beginning, it was us and them. It's like, we can do this, and then we would the stunts. I say my predecessors would be like, "Nah, screw that. We can do it for real." It's both now. You have to work together.
Yeah. Where did you go after you did the stuff with Zach? I mean, he's built a whole goddamn universe for himself. What other projects have you been working on post those?
After that, because I'd been traveling. The family went with me. The kids were changing schools, and I'd seen so many families be apart. Again, another similarity with the military. You're just always away. And so this time the girls were just last couple of years of high school. So I decided to kind of take a step back. I'd had some good years, some lucrative years. I felt like I didn't need to. And I hadn't been a complete idiot with my money, so I decided to take a pay cut and go to work as an assistant coordinator on a TV show, and stay home. And that's when I did I did 3 seasons of Lethal Weapon. Okay.
Oh, well, that makes sense then. Why you gave me the call for Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
It's all coming back together now.
Yeah.
Well, you have done some other large projects post then, right? I was giving you a Google yesterday, a little Wonder Woman action got yourself into recently. Well,
that was the first Wonder Woman. I did the second one.
Oh,
so we did that in the UK. So it was after that. That was and Zach was a producer of that, and he was there at the same time doing Justice League.
Yeah.
But I am, I'm actually headed back to Montreal at the end of this month. I'm going to do another feature.
Sweet. As a stunt coordinator?
that is what my friend that is asking me to go wants me to do. I just want to be a guy.
You just want to be a stunt man?
Yeah.
Just be a dude?
I just want to, yeah. I don't, but we'll see. I think I don't know how that's going to go. But, he's a good friend and he's really taking care of me, so I want to go. And the girls are in college, you know, so my wife, she'll probably come out for a bit and we'll hang out. And
did you work with Triple S? What movie he was doing? Was it Batman versus Superman?
Yeah, he did. I worked with him on a few. He did he did Man of Steel. We were in Michigan for that, which is awesome because me and him went skydiving every weekend. It was awesome.
Yep.
He did
because he did some in front of the camera stuff. I think it was Batman versus Superman. They rode in on the horses and cleared the compound.
Yes,
he's coming up Friday, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah, I'm going to do an episode with him and his wife on Saturday.
Oh, cool! Give him my best. Yeah, I went to his wedding. He jumped into his wedding.
Of course, we're fucking Triple S.
Yeah.
Which again, you jumped for Triple X. Steve is called Triple S because he basically is Triple S, or Triple X, but in the SEAL teams.
I know he's
circle.
He's talented at a lot of stuff.
He is probably the most technically proficient SEAL that I know.
That doesn't surprise me. I went motorcycle riding with him, and he rips.
He's rips
really
on a motorcycle. Good. He can rock climb like a motherfucker. He can skydive. He jumps. He's base jumped. He's done wingsuit stuff. He can shoot pistol carbine, rope work. He gets it done. He gets it done.
Don't sell yourself short. You can do a lot of stuff pretty well too.
I can do all of those things, just not very well.
It is awesome working with him. There's some classic, because I remember one time on Man of Steel, because Zach really he's really got a soft spot for the military and he likes technical accuracy. But at the end of the day, you're a superhero movie. Yeah. And so these guys are kind of coming in as Superman's just, I don't know, thrown a train across the town or something. And it's so funny how we're trying to get super technical in the middle of something that's just bizarre. And he's like saying to Steve, now, would you guys approach, how would you normally... And Steve said something like, well, we would normally do it like this, but there wouldn't be a guy flying around in a cape either. So that's not a situation I can kind of draw on my past experience.
Let's find a balance between technical accuracy and, like you said, the man throwing the train through the grain silo or whatever it was. No, I'm really looking forward to hanging out with him. He's come up once previously for a solo episode. But bringing
I listened to that. It was hilarious.
Fuck, he's just the best.
Yeah.
He's out of his fucking mind in all the best ways possible.
Yeah. It's funny because the technical, because no one knows, right? You guys, are authentic and legitimate, and there are people in Hollywood in that role, in the role of technical advising, that aren't as legitimate. And sometimes you can be a guy that didn't really do anything, but you can tell, like, well, this is the patch they would wear.
Yeah. And
then there's other times with technical advisors where you might have the best guy and he's just not being listened to. So sometimes if something comes out, I've been there on a movie where there's a parachuting sequence, and they're not going to do any real parachuting. I'm just there as a stunt guy. I'm like, that guy's leg straps aren't even done up. You can at least do that. It doesn't look right. It's not. And then you get no one's going to be able to tell that. I'm like, why don't you just do it?
Except for everybody who has any peripheral knowledge of skydiving or base jumping.
I know. And it doesn't cost anything to do it correctly. There was a hijack sequence on one of the lethal weapons, and there was not going to be any jumping, but they had a fuselage on a soundstage and some fans, blowing the wind. And they had the guy was going to hijack him, parachute out, do like a DB Cooper thing. And the props department had got a rig, and it didn't have any 3 rings on it. It was just a D ring, just dangling there. And I said, that's not correct. And I said, look, we have 3 rings in our stunt trailer. We can go at least put them in and we'll tape them back there so at least it looks correct. And we ended up being kind of a pain in the ass because we caused a bit of a delay. I was like, I can't look at that.
Yeah, that would be tough to stomach, to see that. Did you have anything to do with the Point Break jump sequence, the second one? Because I know Jeb was involved in that.
Yeah, I did. In terms of, I originally had that job and I put the whole team together, but I couldn't be in 2 places at once. And Damon had a job, so but all that whole team with John DeVore,
dude,
they did I mean,
can you get any lower? I don't think
not than
so.
John did.
John, if you look at some of those shots, the tail wing is moving grass on the ground, not due to wind, due to physical contact.
Yeah, that guy's a talent. He's like, in skydiving, he can do it all.
Even his ability to do that is unbelievable. And then there were 3 other people
in formation.
I've done that jump. It's an amazing jump. What is it? It's Wallenstein.
Wallenstein,
right?
yeah.
The crack.
Yeah.
I hiked. I suspect there was a helicopter involved in this particular production, which is going to help it. And I get it. But it's an amazing jump. And yeah, I've gotten below the tree line. And everybody's probably seen, well, not everybody, but people who are into base jumping have probably seen the video of Jeb in his black suit hitting the balloon.
Yes.
And zipping through the crack. It's startling.
Yeah.
And then you go there. And you're like, I'm going to do that. And then you start jumping. You're like, I'm not going to do that. Because that visual is not anything that I want to try to process or take that level of risk. I couldn't believe how low John was on that jump.
I know. Yeah, John's really got a cool head as well. He's not like a loose cannon. I'm very impressed with him.
Yeah, he runs his team well. I've only met him. Miles introduced me to him one time, so a very short interaction, but there's some talent there.
Yeah.
A little bit of talent.
Yeah. I've actually thrown a lot of work his way over the years because he's very good.
Yeah, I feel like if you give him a job, he's going to knock it out of the park. And he has a deep Rolodex of people that can do, I mean, shit, man. If you were to tell me I need to pick 3 people to go do that jump at Wallenstein and all fit in between those tree gates.
Right.
He has that Rolodex. I'd be like, I'm out.
Well, so Point Break came around about 6 years ago. There was another version of it, and the director was Jan de Bont, who did Twister and did Speed. He's a pretty well-known action director, and I met with him a few times, and we had a whole team. John was part of that team, and I still have, this is a testament to base jumping. 3 of the guys that I had picked for that team are no longer with us.
Really?
Yeah.
How many of them were wearing wingsuits?
2.
Yeah.
When they passed, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.
I don't know. I don't have the stats, but it seems to me totally anecdotally, and I'm not current at all. I haven't been jumping in a while. I mean, I don't live in a place where there's a DZ. Glacier National Park is amazing. I'm not going to fuck with the legalities of that, nor would I even step to the edge without being current anyway. But to me, you're either both feet in the bucket or none at all. I can't straddle it. But it seems like you start throwing on that nylon straitjacket, and man, if you're not careful, the odds are not in your favor.
No, they're not. And we started this by talking about how what you can do to mitigate the risks. And I've always, because people say, do you still base jump? And I'm like, I don't want to say I've quit, but I haven't done it in a while. And I'm not current. And exactly what you just said. I feel like you've got to be all in, or you can't dabble. You got to be all in. And I know some guys that did nothing wrong that still bit them. I know good guys that probably like you and I that were kind of not wing nuts that had a good approach to it, and they still.
And that's the reality of that particular activity. There's the choices that you have to be comfortable making, or I would say do not even go anywhere near that thing with the 10-foot pole. I still will get messages from people, hey, what's the fastest way for me to get into wingsuit base jumping? And in my mind, it's like, man, take 10 years.
Yeah.
Get a couple thousand jumps.
Yeah.
Really, really stop watching YouTube videos of people. I mean, I've seen them to the point where, like, on snow-capped peaks, people are carving in and they're dragging their wingtips through the snow.
Really?
It's like, fuck. I don't know what else is next other than just snow plow in and try to land it. I'm like, oh, there's a buried boulder. That didn't work out too well for you.
Right.
It's, I'm glad that I did it. I feel like I'm in the same boat. I'm not retired, but I used to live 10 minutes from Skydive San Diego. I would hear the otter taking off, drinking coffee, and I would call and put myself on the second load, and I could go do 8 to 10 jumps in a day. Crazy canopy currency, wingsuit, currency, whatever type of jump. I could, huck a few drogues if I wanted to do tandems. I could put on my small high performance canopy and do some swooping. And now all that's gone, and I'm not interested in trying to. I'm not interested in being in the place where I've been before, and I realized I hated it, and that was the place where it was. This is probably going to be a coin toss. I feel like it's going to be okay, but I'm going to need a little bit of luck to.
Right.
And I don't want to be there. And right now, it's like it's not even luck involved at all. It'd just be idiotic to step up to the edge.
But how cool is it to have had those experiences?
It's amazing. I mean, I miss them. I think about them all the time. I mean, you flew in here from Cali, and I mean, we're at the edge of the Rockies, right? We're the northwestern, right before Canada, 60 miles before Canada. Like I said, Glacier stares at me every day. There's some 5,000-6,000 foot faces in there, and people have gone in Glacier.
Have they?
They have. And so, I don't want to deal with the legality at all. At some point in your life, you'll realize you probably have more to lose than to gain.
Right.
And B, I don't want to go that remote by myself. I would want to go with somebody else, and I don't have access to that individual, meaning anybody up here, nor do I have access to that drop zone. It's just not worth it anymore. But God damn it, I think about it every single day.
But think about the trips that when that gets its hooks into you, and same with skydiving early on.
Oh yeah,
you'll do anything. You'll drive miles, fly to countries. I drove up one time from L.A. My buddy said, we got the key to this elevator of an antenna somewhere in Northern California.
Slightly proximal to the bridge, hypothetically, we're talking about earlier.
I drove up with 4 base rigs, found them. We just were all night on that thing, and then just drove back the next morning with coming down after an adrenaline dump, and then just like, I gotta pull over.
Yeah.
And just napped in a parking lot. But and the skydiving, you had someone on not long ago. You've had a few military guys on. Like, I don't like jumping. I'm always thinking, what?
Yeah.
Jumping's amazing. I don't know how you could do it once and not like it.
I don't know how either. Like when I did my first freefall jump, which was out at Skydive San Diego when it was still at Brown Field, I was like, yes, this is it.
It's the greatest.
I totally agree. But some people like escargot, and that's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, agreed.
So I'm not going to, you know what I mean? To each their own.
Yeah.
To each their own. How was that flight up here with your daughter?
It was awesome.
What was the path you guys took?
She goes to college in San Jose. She's actually a pilot. She's studying aviation. She's 19 and she just got a private pilot's license.
Awesome.
So the path was Reed Hillview to Truckee. We landed in Baker City, Oregon. And then we crossed over to Missoula from there and then up the valley.
God,
it was amazing.
I miss flying for exactly what you're describing. God damn it, it was so much fun.
Yeah, so when we first, not when we first met, but we went flying. I think we went up in my old 182. I think we went skydiving, I think.
Yeah, we flew to Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had your instrument rating. I think you may have just gotten your instrument rating.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I remember, we flew up to Paris in the Cessna, cranked out a few jumps, and then flew back.
But since then, don't you have like a type rating, a citation or something?
Yeah, I have. So I got my private, and then I got my instrument, then I got my commercial, then my multi, then my ATP, and I have a Gulfstream G4 type rating and a Citation 525S type rating. None of which I'm current on at all.
I know, but still, that's an impressive path. That's a lot of bookwork there as well. That's not just flying.
It was a lot. Like the type rating course for the Gulfstream was, I want to say I might be a week long here, but I think it was 5 weeks. If not 5, it was 4. And it was classroom Monday through Friday, early morning until the afternoon, then simulator time, then your oral test, then your check ride. Same thing for the citation, but it was shorter. And I got my ATP when I got my citation type rating. But yeah, then I was flying Part 135 for a bit, which is charter operations, which is a whole nother set of books you got to study and knowledge base you have to have. It was a lot.
So can you stop saying you're a dummy, because you're making me feel stupid, because you've done all that stuff. And if you're a dummy, what does that make me?
I don't know.
You're not a dummy.
What I can say is
that
this.
Stuff's,
it's hard, but there's checklists. So for me, aviation fits very well into the world that I came from.
Right.
There's
Yep.
a structure for everything.
No, you're right about that.
Yeah, like flying Part 135 in the Gulfstream. I did my first left seat takeoff and landing in the Gulfstream, I think it was with 483 hours. At a Carlsbad. We flew over, did a full stop landing at Imperial out by Palm Springs, came back, taxied back, took off, and I landed it, left seat landing at the Carlsbad airport. So I think I had 484 hours or something like that. Whatever. I had 486 when I took off, or 483. I had either 487 or 484 when I landed. And the Carlsbad airport is not a long runway.
No, it's not. It's got a little dip in it too.
It does. You need to have the wheels down, main wheels down on the Gulfstream within about the first 500, or you need to go around.
I've landed there many, many times because I used to have a tie down there.
Yeah. So that was my first go in the actual airplane itself. It was awesome. And the fact that they let me do that was even better.
How do you was that when you were flying for your former employer?
It was when I was flying for my former employer, but I had some time and money banked up on the books, enough to basically charter it for a training flight for myself. So boom, I was like, fuck it, I'm flying this thing.
Like GI Bill money?
No, like just money, extra money put aside from Greg was doing. There was some charter stuff that had been left over, and then money just that I had as well too, just enough to basically. It was there and back. I think we flew for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, but that's thousands.
It was thousands, but over having been flying there and the charter and all that stuff, it added up, and it was worth it in the end because I wanted to prove that I could do it for myself.
So after that, you did that with 400 and odd hours, but you ended up with thousands of hours though, right?
Yeah, just over 3,000 hours now.
And in what kind of aircraft?
So a couple hundred in the Citation, mostly CJ3 mostly CJ3 with probably right around 100 in CJ4. I have a couple hundred hours in a Phenom 100. That a buddy of mine was, he was managing and chartering, and I'd fly right seat with him a bunch. And probably in the Gulfstream, 800 or 900 in the Gulfstream. Some of it was international as well, which was great. And then a lot of it in the Cirrus, which is the plane that Greg bought. And I was flying him back and forth. And I explained to him, like, hey, currency matters in this. And so anytime there was overcast or fog, which there is, as you know, in the San Diego area, May, gray, June, gloom, I'd go up and I would just shoot approaches a couple days a week just to stay current. So it's split kind of between that time, but it's, again, to get back to, people will say, well, how did you do that? You go to the Gulfstream on a 135 flight, which is a charter flight, and there's a checklist for everything.
Right.
Pre-flight. Yeah, guess what? I'm not going to make anything up. I'm just going to do everything that's told to do, to include when I need to show up and what uniform I need to be wearing. So, okay, I would get there and, as the guy in the right seat, I would do the pre-flight and put the, the landing gear pins so the captain could come up and he could stow them to make sure it was a visual check. And I'd go in and guess what I'd do? I'd follow the pre-flight checklist.
Right.
And then it would get double checked. And then I would brief the departure procedure, and same thing with the approach and going through all the avionics and all that stuff. None of those tasks are hard. The knowledge base that goes with it, it took a lot of studying, but I also didn't have any other knowledge to bounce it off of. So I defaulted to my theory of just do what you're told and absorb the information and try to get out of your own way. So the way I was taught it was the way that I did it. If there was a checklist, I followed the checklist and I didn't deviate from it. And it wasn't that hard.
Right. And I guess that kind of learning, it's not like you're learning biology where you're not going to apply it to anything. You learn it and you need to know it. And it's a little bit more interesting when it's relevant. And
you have to perform inside of very strict standards, like departure procedures.
Right.
You need to be at this altitude, at this airspeed, and make the turn at this point.
Right.
Or you're going to get a little call from the FAA. And when you do the radio call, you're going to hear alarms going off in the background. Like, I wonder if those are for me. Do you ever fly out of Van Nuys?
Yeah.
I have a buddy who, I haven't talked with him in a while, but he worked for the FAA, or works probably still for the FAA, and he really helped me in a lot of these process. He introduced me to the charter company and got me my in there, vouched for me when I went up to the type rating school, because the average amount of hours for somebody to go get their Gulfstream type rating is in the thousands.
Oh yeah, you must have.
When I filled out my little application. It's like 460 or whatever it was at the time. They're like, absolutely not. The guy's like, hey, why don't you give him a chance and see if it's, see if it can be done. But it's the stories he has out of Van Nuys are horrifying. It's like the single most violated departure procedure in all of Southern California. Yeah.
It's busy. It's one of the busiest. I don't know if it's one of the busiest Delta airports there is.
And it is right underneath the wedding cake of LAX.
Yeah.
It's
Well, where I fly out of is Hawthorne, which is I mean,
I've flown into there many times. That's basically LAX Southeast.
Yeah.
And it's only one runway instead of like 18, whatever LAX has.
Yeah, and old Brownfield I'm very familiar with as well. And
yeah. No, I've flown in and out of Hawthorne many times. And LAX too, in the Cirrus and in the Gulfstream. It's a different experience depending on the airplane.
LAX in a Cirrus, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, they stuffed me on the far left runway and asked me to maintain my best forward speed.
Because there's a jet coming up behind you.
Yeah, they're like, listen, we really need you to get on the ground. I remember when I pulled it back to idle, it was in the Cirrus. Like I was going as like fast as the flaps would allow me to go. So when I pulled it back to idle, it was ground effect for what felt like
mud. You must have floated all the way down.
Oh my God. I'm like trying to slip a little bit and just like, sorry guys. Like,
wow.
It was cool. I enjoyed aviation again though. You're either both feet in the bucket or that, or you shouldn't step in it.
Agreed.
The controlled flight into terrain, I think still probably the #1 killer of pilots. And you look at it, those cascading effects that lead to it not being current is got to be top 3 on the list of reasons that happens. Why do that to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is, never happened to me or ego.
Yeah, the latter being incredibly dangerous.
Yeah,
in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
So how often do you fly now?
I fly a lot. I mean, I've had my license since 2004, I think. That was when I got my license. And I have just over 2,000 hours, but collectively I've been away for 50% of that. So I think that averages out to be 120 hours a year, but you could sort of double that in the time when I'm actually flying. So I come back on current, I get with an instructor, I get current, and I fly a ton.
Yeah.
But both my daughters go to college in Northern California. So that's been how I've been going to visit them or bring them home for the weekend. And
Hawthorne to San Jose is a great flight.
It's a great flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it multiple times. And then I think we talked years ago, I did some backcountry flying. I took this course out in McCall, Idaho. I've done it twice now and I want to do it. I haven't done any for a while. I want to do more. That's really fun. And it's really...
Was that more low level as well? So you're really getting that interaction of the wind as it's interacting with the terrain and the updraft and the downdraft and all that stuff?
Well, you try to avoid the wind so that you fly early in the morning.
Okay. Because
you really don't want any wind. Because a lot of these runways are one way in, one way out. So you don't want any wind. But you get to these remote areas. And I'm going to do more of that because it's one of those ways that you can have a sense of adventure as an old man. You know what I mean? You can maybe not wingsuit base jumping anymore, but you can fly a plane into these places and do some fly fishing or something and just, have a relaxing day with it's really fun.
It's hard to describe how, I'm trying to think of the best word. I don't want to say freeing it is, but to a degree that's correct. It opens up so many other possibilities and opportunities to be able to throw even like a Cessna. The Cirrus aircraft is a great airframe. Again, I haven't flown one in a while. There's some here. I see them. I'm like, God damn you. Because you could easily, well, probably a Cessna would be better. You could throw on a set of bigger tires on that thing and explore Montana backcountry like nobody's business.
Yeah.
Could you drive and hike those things as well? Absolutely. But it's cool. I used to do this. I'd fly Greg to Prescott and I'd stop in, it wasn't Palm Springs. I think it was Lake Havasu. Like, oh yeah, they got a good Mexican restaurant there, and just dive in to get a burrito.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's cool to be able to do that. And it like 30 minutes from one to the other. I'd like get the burrito to go. And by the time I was done with it, I was almost back home in San Diego.
Prescott, I just was there the other weekend. We flew in there.
It's a great airport.
Yeah, and we were sort of loosely looking at property there because it doesn't look like the rest of Arizona. It's really it's pretty.
Yeah.
It's higher elevation. It's not like that brown desert.
There's a little bit of that if you poke around a bit, but it's certainly certainly different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like Eloy though.
I mean, what is? Truly, what is like Eloy? That is one of the most bizarre skeletons of a town.
We did a trip there. I remember I came out there with Logan.
That's
and
right.
you put him through AFF.
That's correct. And I think Kurt did a tandem.
Yeah, and we all did some tunnel time.
Yes. Was Triple there too?
Yeah, that's where I met him.
There you go. Yeah, Eloy was our old stomping grounds because the parachute training facility was basically halfway in between Tucson and Phoenix. So we'd go up there, do our military jumps, and then go hit the tunnel oftentimes like an hour or two a day for about 30 days straight.
I can't believe the budget you guys had for that.
I couldn't believe it either. And I'm glad that I got to spend that money, and I hope that people still have the opportunity to do so and that we didn't burn any bridges along the way.
Yeah, that was...
We would do 45 to 60 hours of tunnel time between a couple, like the instructor cadre, for a 30-day trip.
And I mean, that is thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So make sure you pay your taxes, people.
That's where it goes.
God, it is the way it goes. Do you still skydive?
Yeah.
How often are you getting the chance to jump?
Not much last year. For
nobody
not
got
much
the
of
chance
anything
to do much of
and but if you don't take last year into account, I mean, not like I used to. I used to jump hundreds of jumps a year, but I stay active. And I've actually done quite a bit of tunnel time in the last few years because
it's a good alternative.
It is a good alternative, and it's a good way of keeping your skills up without. It's not a replacement, but if you're already a skydiver and you're already competent, it's a good way of, staying current and actually getting better.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great. I mean, you want to talk about a phenomenal training tool.
Yeah.
If you move a quarter of an inch in that thing, you can see it. There's nothing more hilarious than listening to two people on a drop zone, both at the early portions of their journey into jumping, complaining about how the other one was all over the place in the sky.
Right.
If we could just get you both in the tunnel, you would realize it was a joint effort.
Yeah. And people that don't do either have a hard time wrapping their head around the fact that, I mean, for me, the tunnel's more scary than the sky. I mean, you can't smack a wall in the sky.
You can smack somebody else, but choose your jumping partners wisely.
Yeah, choose your jumping partners wisely, but I've never been, other than the first few jumps and some movie jumps or doing some big waves, but other than that, skydiving is just fun.
Yeah.
It's probably like the same feeling people get surfing. It's not some big adrenaline. It's just fun. But in the tunnel, I'm a little bit anxious when I'm going to attempt something I haven't done before.
And the consequences are literally right there.
Once you've hit the wall, you don't want to do it again. It's not fun.
I've seen people not go out of the tunnel on stretchers, but I've seen people get out of the tunnel and go straight to the hospital for casts. Whether it be like elbows or, as the wall's coming up and boom, both wrists.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not fun. Saw an interesting departure from the wind cone one time as they were doing some acrobatic stuff and essentially tried a rotation and half their body went out of the door and rapidly was followed by the other half. Yeah, didn't stick the landing.
Actually, I was going to the Oceanside Tunnel quite a bit, and I remember now I ran into a guy that knew you. His last name was Norris.
Nick Norris?
Nick Norris, yeah.
He was about 3 feet tall. That's Nick. Yeah. It might be 2.5. If he was here right now standing up, we wouldn't even be able to see his head over the table.
I can't remember how that came up.
He's been on the podcast too. He's phenomenal. He's working for an organization, the C4 Foundation, the Charles Keating IV.
Oh, I've heard about that, yeah.
Yeah. He was killed in Iraq. I don't remember which year, but was awarded the Navy Cross for his actions that day. And what an awesome dude. I served with him at Team 3, and I'm pretty sure I put him through BUD/S as well, but it sucks. It's the price of that particular chosen occupation.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I think I've heard you talk about this, but do you still miss it?
The job?
Yeah.
There are aspects of the job that I miss for sure. And I think a lot of them are based, if I'm objectively thinking about it, I'd say it's 80%. I really miss the camaraderie and the cohesiveness of the people that I worked with. At 20%, I miss some of the really cool shit that we used to be able to do. But if my only option was to do all of that cool shit, but I was by myself, it wouldn't be the same. I would need those. I would need those people there. One, I wouldn't be able to do it by myself because damn near everything we did, if not everything we did, was, I mean, the minimum fighting force was 2, not 1. So I had to have them there to even enable me to do that. And I think, I should say, I know that's what I miss the most. But there are, aspects of what we used to do that I certainly miss, the actions themselves or the activities themselves.
Because I've listened to you talk about it, and it's interesting. I said earlier on, another similarity is people in my business, that's their identity. So unlike the military, there isn't like an end time or retirement. You can kind of like fade away slowly. You can walk away, or the business can retire you. You can just, the phone stops ringing.
I was just going to say exactly that. Yeah.
And, some guys that have had outstanding careers that were legends are, some of them are kind of bitter and disappointed that they're not getting called anymore. And I don't want to be like that. I had a great run. I want to look back on it fondly, but not, but it is tough because I'm about to go away on another job. It's, and they're fun. It's not like it's not fun, but there is a time when you think, how much longer am I going to do this? And if I do hang it up, what am I going to do? Because I'm not going to sit in a rocking chair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what would you want to do? You got your airplane, which doesn't suck.
No, I would probably, I've thought about it a little. I'd like to do some volunteer flying, I think. I certainly would be busy. I just wouldn't be making money, which is.
There are many people who are doing that accidentally.
Yeah. No, I think I would do more flying. I've actually, the last few years, thankfully my wife's really into it. We go flying and camping, and it's really cool.
Flamping, whatever they call it.
Is there a name?
Flying camping, plamping, plane camping.
Well, there's places where you can, you can put your tent under the wing and. Yeah,
I've seen those. It was something that I don't know if I ever would have gone down that path, but I was at least looking at those type of things when I was still flying a bunch and living in San Diego.
Right.
Again, there are opportunities that unless you have the ability to get your hands on an airplane and go somewhere, people will never even know that that's a possibility.
No, it's awesome. I go over to Catalina Island quite a bit.
I've been in there many times for the Buffalo Burgers.
Yeah.
Quite good.
Yeah.
That runway is an interesting one as well. I hope they've done maintenance on it since the last time I was there. Good.
Rebuilt by the Marines.
Really?
Yeah.
So it probably sucks. I mean, fuck. I feel like there was geometry involved in that.
You're going to get some hate mail.
Dude, I love them. The Marines are some of my favorite people. It's all in good fun for sure. How much longer do you think you'll stay in your current trade?
I don't know. I just turned 55, and I can actually take early retirement from the Screen Actors Guild as of a couple of weeks ago. So I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I'm in a place right now where I pick and choose my jobs. I do not take I do not take everything that comes my way. I take big gaps between jobs. You have to manage your finances in this career sort of like the earning arc is like a pro athlete. You're going to have your earning years, and then it's going to taper off unless you become a big second unit director and stunt coordinator, which is it's not on the cards for me. So I banked a lot of that money that I made, not all of it. I did some dumb things, but I still hung on to a good amount of it.
If you're not going to do at least some dumb things with your money, what is it even for? I know. I'm not saying all of your money. No. Give yourself like 1 or 2% and do some dumb shit.
Oh, that's probably more than 1 or 2%.
but. Don't leave yourself 1 or 2%. No. Listen to what I'm saying, everybody. 1 or 2%, maybe an argument can be made for 5%, and go do some dumb shit. You'll thank me for it.
Well, too many people live their income goes up and they just adjust the lifestyle accordingly.
Yeah, you get used to spending what's in your pocket.
Yeah.
And some of the best advice I've ever been given about money is it's not what you make, it's what you spend.
Yeah.
So if you can control the latter aspect of that, to me, I've made some stupid decisions with money, to include working for CrossFit too long. That's why I stayed.
Right.
I was making money. I was making an amount of money that then I thought was like, oh, I guess I'll never make more than this because this is amazing. But you could easily max that out and be living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting paid anything crazy. I just was going from a military job to something that was paid differently, and stayed longer than I should have, tolerated things that I shouldn't have, bought stupid shit. And now to me, like, I get the value of money. You have to have the essentials and all those things. I understand being smart with it, investing for the future and all of that. But I view money as a mechanism to give you choices.
Yeah. And you need, once you have a certain amount, you have enough. And it's too cliched, but it does not buy you happiness. I mean, sure, being broke and poor, that's miserable. That's not fun. But once you've got enough, if there was some happiness scale, you're not going to score any higher. People think they would,
I know
but you don't.
Quite a few people who are extravagantly wealthy. They're not as happy, from my outside perspective, listening and watching, as some of the people that I know who are on the tightest budget that I've ever seen in my entire life, with not a lot in the bank, living the fuck out of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
So I will get you out of here at some point. I know people are going to ask, how do I do what Tim does? So we lay out a reasonable approach to becoming a stuntman.
Well, you're going to have to live where movies are made.
So Alaska.
That's either L.A., it's Hollywood, L.A., or actually Atlanta. There's a big section of the movie business there. And get training. Martial arts, gymnastics. Nowadays, free running or parkour is a good skill to have, because that's kind of like a lot of, athleticism and running and jumping and hopping walls and jumping through windows, all that kind of stuff. The driving, things like that can come later because that's expensive to go to driving schools. But the stuff that, gymnastics, trampoline, and then when you get to the area where stunt guys are, find people in the same position as you that are young, hungry stunt guys. You can train in the park. You can video fight scenes. And you keep at it, and it will. The formula is actually pretty simple. It's just the execution that's hard. If you do all of those things, and you've got to put yourself in the mix. So if you get skilled in those areas, and find out where young stunt guys train, you'll get information off them. Oh, I know this guy's working. My buddy's working over here. Let's go meet the stunt coordinator. Or, it will snowball from there. But I've known lots of people over the years. Actually, quite a few skydivers have said, I want to be a stuntman. And I always have I don't want to be a curmudgeon and go, yeah, well, it's hard as hell, so I wouldn't bother. I always go, all right, well, this is what you have to do. But not many are prepared to do it.
That is true of almost every path in life. Like you said, the recipe, I think, for most things is very simple. It's the execution that trips people up. Everybody, I don't know if I know anybody who hasn't at least expressed at some point in their life this huge dream, whether it be to achieve something or become something, fill in the blank. Very few people actually make it. And I don't think it's the recipe that's messing them up.
I agree. Because when you meet someone that wants to do it, whether it's they want to be in the SEAL teams or if they want to pursue a stunt career, and they sound like, this is my dream, you don't understand. Now you put somebody like you, your dream was to be a SEAL, and then you put somebody else who's got the same pitch as you. He's as enthusiastic as you are, but he 3 days into Hell Week was gone. But somebody listening to you two at the beginning, they're like, well, they both sound like they're into it. I can't really tell. Only time will tell. Only time will tell if they'll be there.
Which is the truth, because people will ask me all the time, can my son make it through? What do you think? And my only honest answer is I don't know, because they have to get into that moment and then see how it goes from there.
So, and again, I want to be careful there. I'm not saying being a stuntman is like being a SEAL. I don't mean any disrespect there, but what it sounds like it is, the glory stuff, and what it actually is aren't the same. Also
true in almost everything, I think.
Yeah. But I'm not going to lie, it is a great profession. I'm the luckiest man in the world to do what I do. The variety has been phenomenal. It just hasn't been easy, but it's been great.
I think that's true of, again, not everything, but most things.
Right.
If you dedicate yourself, it's easy to see people only on the wave tops or the mountain peaks or however you want to describe it, and not see the inches and feet that they had to claw to get to that particular mountaintop.
Yeah. I've spoke to people that have mentored early on, and then, run into them in a couple of years and it didn't work out. And I was like, yeah, I tried it, but it's all who you know. It's Hollywood. It's all who you know. And I just think, okay, well, you weren't that interested, because it's just, there is some of that, but you can overcome that.
Yeah, true. I find that most people's stumbling block is the person they see in the mirror every day.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't do social media, do you?
No.
I was going to ask you how people can get in touch with you, but since you don't do that, I'm not going to I can just put your phone number up at the end of the episode so people can text you directly for feedback. But closing thoughts by Tim Rigby. Let me get you out of here and back to your daughter so you guys can enjoy your vacation.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I don't have any social media or anything to, it's a very anonymous profession. So there's not really any benefit to, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It's not, it's not how you get hired.
I think they should just email ZachSnyder@gmail.com for any inquiries from Tim. I'm not sure that better not be your email, Zach.
No. Oh, if it is.
God, if it is, you're an idiot. You deserve what happened. So, no, dude, it's so good to reconnect. I'm glad you made
Likewise.
it up here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, thank you for your time, and I'll get you back to your daughter.
Thank you.
Cool.
On the west bank of the river. That's A-firm, west bank. It gives me hell. Still give it to me in the grove. Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that bag, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review, or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you.